lockdown, please, Prime Minister.
Yes.
They were pretty much a man and woman breaking the rules, right? Because the rules were for the little people, not them because they knew better. The rules weren't necessary at all. Guidance, advice for elderly people, people at risk, yes. And that is the thing, and I think that's...
But we were very responsible, you and I together, seemingly the lone voices, right?
God, we just...
At that time, and funnily enough, an MP actually thanked me today. I was quite taken aback. He just said, you know, you got me through it because, you know, you were actually being sensible. I still have people come up to me in the street, so thank you for keeping me sane during lockdown. It's true. Amazing. Anyway, the sanest of the sane will be here.
That's worrying.
That's worrying.
What,
Julia
after 1
Hartley-Brewer
o'clock?
for the next 3 hours. I'll see you tomorrow at 6.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened. I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. The shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in or far ball, slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, or watching on YouTube on your connected device, it's always great to have your company. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I'm with you all the way till 1 o'clock, and we've got a lot to talk about, including the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner setting up a council on Islamophobia to advise on an official government definition of the anti-Muslim discrimination. The likes of former Conservative Attorney General Ramona-in-Chief Dominic Grieve being set up to lead that. But do we need an official definition of Islamophobia? Really? And is Islamophobia, as Dominic Grieve has written before, actually something that is fundamentally led by racism? Because I think you can actually have very strong views and critical views of the religion of Islam without having any hatred of Muslim people. surely? We'll talk about that, and I want to hear your thoughts on that as well. I'll give you the number in just a minute. Also going to be talking more about the Donald Trump tariff war. Big developments overnight. Keir Starmer has warned Europe's leaders, the first time a British leader has addressed the EU leaders in Brussels since Brexit 5 years ago. He said he will not take sides in a trade war if Donald Trump does actually impose tariffs on the EU. But he says he wants Britain's vital interests to be the crucial thing to avoid a conflict. However, we have seen Canada and Mexico cave to Donald Trump's tariff threat. They've now been paused for another 30 days. China, though, when those 10% tariffs on many Chinese goods came into force at 5 o'clock UK time this morning, immediately imposed retaliatory tariffs. Now, we can all think this is something that's happening over there and over there, nothing to do with us, Gov. Hate to tell you, it is going to affect us. It is going to push up prices for us here in the UK if it carries on. We'll talk about all of that. Also, great news for one Nigel Farage Esquire today. The Reform UK has overtaken Labour for the first time in a YouGov opinion poll. There have been previous opinion polls which have seen Reform being above Labour, but most of those have been viewed as outliers. This is YouGov standard poll, one that's frankly not been very favourable to Reform in the past. Looking at Labour on 24 points, Reform on 25, Tories languishing behind on 21. So what does that mean, especially with local elections coming up in a few months' time? Plus, Keir Starmer and the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni have agreed a deal to allow police forces from both countries to work together to crack down on migrant boats. Well, at least we know she's serious about it, eh? All that, plenty more coming up, including we're keeping abreast of the press conference about Lucy Letby being led by leading medics, but also the Tory MP David Davis, where they are proclaiming evidence of her innocence of the murder of 7 babies and the attempted murder of another 7 babies. They have applied yesterday to the Criminal Case Review Commission to investigate her case as a potential miscarriage of justice, her lawyers have said. We'll keep you abreast of that throughout the show. Right now, I'd like to welcome Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Advisor, who joins us for the show for the day. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Another quiet news day. Another quiet news day in Newstown.
Nothing happening, nothing to see.
I mean, I long for this. Do you know what? There's things like, oh, it's too much news. There's too much news about. And then when there's a day when it's all a bit bitty and nothing, you were like, oh, why is there no good news?
Where is it?
It's never right. It's never right. We've always got plenty. I mean, we're never going to be short of a story on this show, that's for sure. I'm going to talk about tariff wars first. I know a lot of people go, it's just... it's not us. The tariffs aren't on us. And what difference does it make? Think about tariffs are a tax. They make things more expensive for the country that has imposed the tariff. So if there is a tariff war against us, we will have to pay more for various goods. Now, it's very clear. Justin Trudeau in Canada, like the complete male feminist, girly, absolute, hopeless, inadequate excuse for a human being that he is. Hi, Justin. He has, of course, caved, as has Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, after apparently very warm, friendly conversations. Now, Donald Trump's claiming this big win because they've agreed to put 10,000 or 15,000 troops on the border, stop the flow of migrants, stop the flow of fentanyl into America. A lot of this stuff was actually already happening. Yeah. It's a little bit of show. It's a little bit of posturing on Donald Trump's side. But there is an argument, well, if he's got what he wanted and he's got what he perceives to be his win, then good for him. But China, not so. 10% tariffs on China. China, very different to Mexico and Canada, absolutely rely on that trade with the US, as indeed the US does with them, biggest trading partners. But China is second biggest economy in the world. China have gone, 5 o'clock this morning. No, we're going to impose retaliatory tariffs. Now, they've got control. They've also got access to an awful lot of natural resources, but crucially also they control pretty much all the rare minerals in the world. Even the ones they haven't got, they've imported them. They control the mines and around South America and Africa and Asia. They've got a lot more power to take on Donald Trump. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I don't think China are going to back down. That's the one thing that from them is that they are pretty sure with all of the minerals, as you've said, which make all of the chips and solar technology
and mobile phones.
Yeah, so
none of the stuff we use.
No, everything we take for granted they've got. And so they'll just sit there and go, OK, fine, we're going to impose these rules on you, but also launching an investigation into Google.
Yeah,
which I think this is where
over monopoly.
America, over monopoly rules. So I think this is where America will start to take note. That's actually going to have much more of an effect. So
I mean, China does have the power to do this. The economic might do this, but also crucially, Xi Jinping not so worried about the next election.
Yeah.
Not worried about opinion polls, not really remotely worried about his own people.
Exactly.
Now, this is the thing. Donald Trump came into office. One of the key things, we talk about immigration a lot, we talk about taking on the wokery. It's about the cost of living. People felt poorer because they were poorer. Their standard of living had gone down as a result of inflation. By the way, their inflation rate, nothing compared to what we've seen in Europe because of their cheaper energy supplies. But at the end of the day, tariffs are going to make goods more expensive for American people. That is not going to go down well. So it's quite interesting to see how that works out. What do you think of Keir Starmer basically saying he's not going to criticise Trump? Because I'm quite surprised that he seems to have actually, and I didn't think he had it in him, to actually play this in quite a nuanced, clever way. I mean, I don't like to give too much credit to the man. He's probably done it by accident, but...
It's almost as if he's learned something to keep your powder dry. But no, I mean, I think this is probably more by accident than design.
Yeah.
He's over in the EU. He doesn't want to... He can't think of what's going on in the US at the same time as what's going on in the EU and in the UK. He just can't cope with that. So I think that's accidental.
Yeah. It's interesting because Keir Starmer definitely doesn't like to offend people. He's always so careful with his words, isn't he? Apart from when he's talking about the British people and he thinks we're all far-right and disgusting bigots. It's funny, isn't it? The only people he doesn't mind insulting is us.
Should we have that on a T-shirt?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. We say we're all far-right now. Well, we are all far-right now, according to Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, who has an incredibly wide-ranging brief, which is interesting because, of course, we know from this new book, being serialised in the Sunday Times, that, she has no time for him. She thinks he's, he couldn't run a bath, let alone a country. And
fair point.
She's been
fair point.
remarkably accurate on that. I wouldn't trust him to run a bath either. He'd probably overflow it everywhere. No, he's probably one of those men who goes, don't have it too hot or too deep. He's one of those men. Don't waste water. Don't waste water.
Yeah, get a temperature gauge.
But anyway, it's weird because the energy prices for heating your water are so cheap now. We've got green energy. Did he not get the memo? Anyway, I digress. But Angela Rayner's got this massive big brief. I mean, lots of people thought she thought she was going to be out on her ear before the election. He was going to get rid of this role of deputy leader or deputy prime minister. She wouldn't have a role. She's got a very big role. Not only is she basically able to sign off on housing and lots of issues like that, but also council tax rises of up to 10% in affecting 3 million people across this country, including in Birmingham, Windsor and Maiden and others, basically failing councils. But she's also apparently in charge of whether or not, what the definition is of Islamophobia. She is setting up a council of advisors on Islamophobia, and basically they're lining up a former Tory minister to lead it, Dominic Grieve, the former Tory Attorney General, prominent Remainer. He's not a Remainer, he's a Remoaner. He's someone who tried to stop Brexit from happening. Never forgive, never forget. But they basically want to draw up an official government definition for anti-Muslim discrimination to provide advice to ministers on tackling Islamophobia and all the other issues. I mean, I don't know about you, I'm thinking of what's been going on in the news in the last couple of years. All the things we've had, the terrible things that have happened in this country. And I definitely think that, tackling Islamophobia is absolutely the number one issue for most British people, isn't it? I mean, it's the number one issue, isn't it? That's the big problem.
Yeah, everything. It's going to be one of the lead issues when you go into the local elections. It is utterly ridiculous. We've been round this block before. There was an all-party parliamentary group that were looking into Islamophobia. They came up with a report.
Led by Wes Streeting.
And it's been rejected. It was too wide-ranging. And
it was accepted by the Labour Party.
Yes, but by everybody else it was rejected.
But basically they stated that Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. So that, of course, includes criticism of, of the veil, of any sort of Muslim dress. Well, I absolutely 100% object to people wearing a burqa on London streets.
Yeah.
The same way France has banned it, quite rightly. I would have exactly the same ban. I think it's antisocial. I think it's divisive. I think it's an expression of a political ideology, which is not one I do definitely not espouse. And it's othering, and it's bad. It's bad for the women who wear it, and it's bad for the country.
Yeah.
Apparently, that would make me Islamophobic.
it would criminalise you. You could actually be arrested for that. And it also, anybody who's left the Muslim faith who wants to come out and say, this is why I've done it, these are the reasons behind it, would also then be a criminal. So any kind of free speech just goes right out of the window. And this is a really scary moment. These are blasphemy laws that are coming in via the back door. Well, not even really, but via the back door. Probably right in the front door.
They're knocking on number 10 and going, hi, can we have a photo op?
Exactly. And you can be critical of Islam. You can be critical of what it stands for.
You can be critical of all religions.
Absolutely.
Last time I looked on a technicality, we were a free country.
And that's it. And that's the really worrying aspect. So why are they being treated differently to every other religion?
One of the candidates, 16 candidates shortlisted for the council, is Qari Asim. He's a Leeds imam. He was dismissed as a government advisor by the Tories in 2022 after he backed calls for a ban on the film The Lady of Heaven. This is a film about the Prophet Muhammad's daughter. And there was outcry. There were basically a mob. Let's call it what it was. There were a mob of Muslim men standing with placards outside a cinema that was showing this film. And basically, the guy running the cinema had to come out and sort of say, no, we've stopped showing it. Because people are terrified. This is mob rule. Yes. This is threats of violence winning. This is absolutely outrageous. I mean, I'm sorry. You don't get to decide what film is shown in a cinema. There are plenty of things I wouldn't like, but I don't want to stop people seeing it. I'm not in favour of that sort of censorship. It's outrageous. It's based on threats. The fact that one of the guys even being shortlisted for this is someone like that. And we all remember that image, don't we, of Angela Rayner in her local constituency courting Muslim votes. Again, I don't think anyone should be courting Muslim votes or Christian votes or atheist votes. You should be courting votes from people from, are you a family? Are you worried about schooling? Are you worried about crime? That's got nothing to do with the colour of people's skin or their religion. Okay, people should not be dividing people by those things. A black woman has as much with a teenage child has as much concern about the things I've got concern about as I have as a white woman. If you're unemployed or if you're pensioned, it's about what you're doing in your life, not the pigmentation in your skin or which particular religious text you follow. I don't really think that should be the thing. And there she was. She normally dresses, there's a lot showing on occasion. She's entitled to do whatever you want and don't care. But when she's with this meeting, imams and Muslim so-called community leaders, self-appointed, always men, she's got a little high neck, she's got long sleeves, she's got a long dress, and she's like this. Nothing like the Angela Rayner we see.
Yes.
Now I'm sorry. That doesn't fly with me. I do not trust this woman on this. Labour Party are so obsessed with trying to court the so-called Muslim vote, which I don't think should exist in this country, as in people should vote according to what their views and their needs are, nothing to do with that. I think we are in really dangerous territory, and we're already in dangerous territory because we've got a de facto blasphemy law, because people are too scared to speak up because they know, not they think, they know they will face death threats. Yeah. And they're going to compound it.
Well, this is it. And even if it's the police not looking at these particular crimes, then those community groups absolutely do, and they'll take it into their own hands, as with the poor teacher in Batley who is still in hiding.
Still in hiding with his 4 children.
And that's because the community took it into their hands to decide that he was guilty, and nothing else would do.
Local MP. Yeah. Kim Lebita still hasn't made a statement.
Exactly.
On it. Still never mentioned it. A member of your own constituency got into hiding because of threats. Nothing. De nada. Sorry, do you trust these people to give a definition of Islamophobia? What is your definition of Islamophobia? I'd love to hear from you. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text on 87222. You can get in touch on X at talkTV. Leave a message on our YouTube page as well. Calls are charged at national rates. Text costs 1 standard network rate message. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because I've really got massive big question marks about this. And I think, again, the idea that Islamophobia is the big burning issue in this country. I mean, they're having a laugh, aren't they? They really are having a laugh. Let's talk about Harvey Wilgoose, 15-year-old schoolboy, went to school in Sheffield, and he didn't come home. He was stabbed to death at school, not even outside school, not even on the school bus home, as we've been seeing in cases recently when kids went back to school after the Christmas holidays. Harvey Wilgoose was stabbed in his school at All Saints Catholic High School in Granville Road in the city at about 12:17 yesterday. Police paramedics went to the scene. The teenager died a short time after. Another 15-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murder. He remains in police custody this morning, South Yorkshire Police said. Now, we do know that a group of kids, we're assuming boys, mostly boys, had brought in knives and threatened to use knives in the school a week ago. The school went into lockdown a week ago. Because, you know, that's normal. Do you remember when you were at school and your school would go into lockdown and everyone would have to hide under their desk because another kid had brought a knife in and threatened violence? You know how that was a normal thing at school, yeah? Oh, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It literally never happened. It never happened. Someone might have got beaten up behind the bike sheds. That was the worst that happened, you know? It was fisticuffs. Yeah. But now kids are bringing knives to school. Now, there's a lot of stuff we can't say, because we're talking about a 15-year-old. You don't want to actually prejudice any trial. And, we're back into Axel Rudikabana territory, aren't we? But he's not going to be named because he's so young. He's not just a week off his 18th birthday. But there are some big question marks about whether or not a school, let's talk more loosely, should a school, when a child has come into school with a knife and made violent threats against another pupil, as it would seem may have been a circumstance in this case, should a school allow that child ever to be back in the school again? Because I would suggest as a parent, any child who brings a knife in, it's not extra detention, is it? It's not extra homework. It's not writing lines out. I will not bring a knife into school and threaten to stab other pupils. I will not bring a knife into school and threaten other pupils. No, writing that out 100 times isn't going to fly for me. I want you reported to the police. I want you expelled. Bye-bye, and I want you in a safe unit. We've got a ball store nearby. The key thing is where we see this violence again and again and again, there is evidence that it was known there was a concern about somebody and nothing happens.
And if you're a parent of other children, you are going to be looking at that school wondering why your kid hasn't been safeguarded in the way that it should have been.
Yeah.
I would be absolutely appalled if that happened at my child's school and I'd be the first one in there.
Oh my God.
You wouldn't stop me. I'd be straight down the motorway, straight in.
I've got to be honest with you. I mean, I'm surprised the head teacher's still in a job, personally. I don't even know how we could even begin to say, yeah, this is fine. Like this is even an option to happen in our schools. I think we are in mad territory where we're just going to start like just shrugging and just go, yeah, whatever. That's just what happens. And I really just find this absolutely extraordinary. Let's also talk about Keir Starmer. Now, I wasn't over excited about this story about him and his voice coach. 2020, December 2020. This is Leonie Mellinger. She visited Labour's London headquarters on Christmas Eve in 2020, when the capital was already under Tier 4 regulations. And it was basically, Keir Starmer gave a short statement on Boris Johnson's Brexit deal. The voice coach travelled between different COVID tiers from Tier 3 to Tier 4, which was not allowed. They both claimed that no rules were broken. But the Tier 4 rules stated at the time, residents in Tier 1 to 3 should not enter Tier 4 areas because Tier 4 was considered more dangerous. She took a selfie at Labour's central office on December 24th. We know we were there. He gave an 11-minute press statement that afternoon. By all accounts, she was giving you advice on how to, speak better and be less wooden. Yes, he definitely needed that training. I'm not sure I'd be paying for that training. I'm not sure it worked very well. But my view yesterday was that, it was probably on some technicality within the rules. We've got more important things to worry about right now. But it does appear it wasn't within the rules. She did all her other work on Zoom. The idea that she was, a key worker. I mean, I was a key worker in that time. My husband was IT, keeping people's IT. That made you a key worker. But I mean, there's key worker. An actress voice coach. I mean, it beeped me off that football players and actors were allowed to work. Oh, but not other people. I mean, it was a very confusing and unhappy time. Let's be honest. But as one of the callers to Mike's show just pointed out in messages, he said, "Oh, it's a pity I couldn't have pretended to be a voice coach to my grandmother. Unfortunately, I was just her grandson, so I couldn't see her." And that's the reality, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And what is so urgent on Christmas Eve that you need to have your voice coach? Was he in the Nativity? Was he playing King Herod?
He was going to make this statement about... There's a bit of story about Brexit, wasn't there?
Well, 11 minutes statement. I mean, what's the point of that anyway on Christmas Eve? He wasn't the Prime Minister. But also it's the pious nature of Keir Starmer that every single time a Conservative MP did anything they deemed to be wrong and outside of the rules, they were calling for resignations.
Oh, yeah.
But when it's the Labour Party, it doesn't matter. They didn't do it. It was all within the rules and they were fine. So, no, I'm not having any of this. And I think we probably should have got over it. It is nearly 5 years ago. However, I'm not over it.
No, exactly. Really not. But there we are. Right, plenty more to talk about, including Reform UK topping the Tories, topping Labour, and the Tories in the polls. We're going to be talking to Richard Tice about that in a few minutes. Up next, though, I want to take your calls. Now, as you know, you can always call in on any of the topics we're talking about, the Keir Starmer and the voice coach, the tariff wars, anything you want to talk about. But I do particularly want to hear from you today about Islamophobia, because the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, her in the long red dress, sort of kowtowing. You remember her in that image with Muslim leaders in her local constituency? She's setting up a council to create an official government definition of Islamophobia. Well, the man set up to lead it is someone who's previously said that he believes that is effectively any expressions of Muslimness, criticism of that. So even criticising someone wearing the burqa could make you Islamophobic. Does that make you Islamophobic? Does that mean the whole of the French government is Islamophobic? And the Belgians and many others who've banned the burqa? I'd love to hear from you. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. That is the number to call. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
When the road gets squeezed, the oil comes out and it helps to stop the bitumen from cracking and helps kind of keep it all together. So it might have some limited use when you're relaying roads, I think. You would have to be relaying roads completely or building new ones, and then it might make these roads a bit more durable. So I think it's great that we're trying to be innovative about these things.
Sure.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall is also still with me, former Conservative Government Advisor. Going to be joined by Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, who's obviously looking very happy this morning after that latest poll, suggesting that Reform are now ahead of Labour in the polls. We'll talk about that in a few moments. Love to hear your reaction to that as well. 0344 499 1000. Lots of messages coming in about this new definition of Islamophobia. Deputy PM Angela Rayner is setting up a council to create an official government definition of Islamophobia. Bearing in mind, Labour have already accepted this definition of Islamophobia, which basically, I mean, Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. Ron says, how about Britophobia? The fear the government and establishment have of the British population and thus the actions they take to suppress them. This includes the importing of and prioritising of other nationalities and cultures to replace the native population. I mean, genuinely, I would say that was a bigger issue right now. Carol says, blasphemy court next. Are we going to have a Christian blasphemy law? I doubt it. Exactly. Susie says, they're so out of touch with the British people. They're like the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. Vaughan says, pandering to 6% of the UK population, difficult to understand what really makes Labour tick. Thought Marxist, but not sure. Again, I don't think this is pandering to 6% of the UK population. I think the vast majority of Muslim people in this country just want to live a completely normal life, along with everybody else, because they're not defined by their religion the way most people aren't, and just want to live a normal life. And then you get political ideologues who are pushing a more extremist ideology, and they are pushing for us to not be allowed to criticise the religion. If you don't want your religion criticised in this country, then don't live in this country. It is that simple for me. I am an atheist. I'm entitled to criticise all religions, and you're entitled to tell me I'm going to hell. I don't mind. We're allowed to say that. Under the law, de facto, things are different. Cornelia says, if you need a council to work out the meaning of a word, it's proof of a sinister intention and acknowledgement they know what they're doing is wrong. And Victor says, another waste of public money on something that's not real. Interesting point. Let's go to Peter, who's on the line in Croydon. Hello, Peter.
Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning. What do you want to say?
Yes, Angela Rayner, as far as I'm concerned, she can do one. I mean, all he's trying to do is shut the conversation down. We've got three issues. We've got the rape gangs, immigration and extremism. They're just trying to shut us up.
Yeah.
And also hidden ones as well. Do you remember there was an arranged marriage about, 15 years ago? There was a young woman who refused to enter an arranged marriage. She was hunted down and killed by her parents, wasn't she?
Well, I mean, no, we do have that in a number of different groups. You know, there are some sort of different other cultures other than Islam, but actually, yeah. So basically, forced marriages, effectively, and these awful phrase. Honour killings by families because of girls who don't want to marry out or don't want to marry someone chosen for them. And again, that's not acceptable in our country. It's not acceptable. It's not cultural difference. Not acceptable. Illegal. Simple as that.
Of course it's not. And journalists, they're going to report on it. Are they? Is every journalist going to be Islamophobic?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I'm obviously Islamophobic because I criticise things like, the outward expression of Muslimness. But again, there's no requirement in the Quran at all. It's not really actually a requirement in Hadith, the secondary text, for any woman to cover her face. That's how you interpret it anyway. But, I mean, and most Muslim women around the world don't wear face coverings. Oh, but to criticise that makes you Islamophobic. I have to say, I walk past women every day in central London wearing the burqa or some version, and I'm sorry, it makes me angry. I think it's such an offensive garment to women. Absolutely. It's such an offensive garment. I think to other people, it is. I just think it's unacceptable. But apparently, that'll probably get me before the courts next.
No, we need to see their faces. No, I mean there was a Muslim man. He was dressed wearing a burqa, wasn't he?
Well, this is my thing. I often see men who they're like in a t-shirt and shorts in the middle of the summer, but the wife is covered up. I mean, it's a political, ideological expression, and more girls being put into the head coverings as well. I mean, France gets some things very right. None of that's allowed. It's not allowed in public buildings, not allowed in your office, it's not allowed in school. I mean, I think that's what we should do. And that is about, it's like the Michaela School run by Catherine Birbal Singh. No, we're not having any expressions of religious differences. We're going to all look the same, which is much healthier.
She's brilliant, yeah.
We love her, we love her. Thank you so much, Peter. I'm going to really quickly squeeze in Brian, who is in Wigan. Hello, Brian.
Oh, good morning, Julia. Lovely to speak to you again, my love.
Lovely to speak to you. What do you want to say on this?
Rather ironic, isn't it, that Angela Rayne is pushing this law in, or this, when she's in the ward next door to Oldham. Rochdale's not two miles away from her ward. She's said absolutely bugger all about the raping gangs and the grooming gangs.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt at all. I think Labour, we know most of this stuff has happened under Labour councils, not entirely. We also know it was Labour councils often who kept quiet. Labour MPs who spoke up got told to shut up and their careers were over. And Labour don't want a full inquiry into it. And we've seen that pandering to them. And again, I hate that term, the Muslim vote. I don't think that should exist. But we saw that. We saw, we've got 5 MPs for Gaza now, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. But, I thought we were a Christian country, but we seem to be changing our faith.
Well, I mean, we are, that's the thing. I mean, I'm an atheist, but we are officially, constitutionally, we are a Christian country.
I'm with you.
Yeah, it's strange.
Exactly.
I just think it's absolutely mad. Again, I don't want anyone facing hatred or abuse or threats ever because of their religion or their race or anything like. But that's not what we're talking about with Islamophobia. They want to make this far wider. You can't even criticise something in the Quran. I mean, that's what that would involve. Really appreciate that call, Brian. Thank you very much indeed for that. Going to take a quick break. Up next, going to be talking to Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK. I'm sure we'll be talking tariffs. We'll be talking about Islamophobia, and we'll be talking about that latest poll that puts Reform 1 point ahead of the government. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall still with me. We're joined by Deputy Leader of Reform UK and Reform MP, Richard Tice, in the studio. Very good morning to you.
Very good morning to you.
You're looking very, very chipper and happy. I wonder whether that's got anything to do with this latest YouGov poll, which, for the first time in a major poll, certainly YouGov, we've got Reform ahead, not just of the Tories, but ahead of Labour as well. We've got Reform on 25, Labour on 24, and the Tories languishing behind on 21. So congratulations to you on that. That said, long way off a general election.
Yeah, long way off, but look, we've got the momentum.
No, but it's within,
it's within the realms. But what people were starting to realise is that actually a Tory vote is a wasted vote and it's splitting the vote. So actually what they should really start to recognise now, as they start to run out of money, all sorts of rumours about that, is that maybe they need to stand aside and let reform. We've got the momentum. You know, we've got to turn this around because the country's in a terrible state, worse than ever, under this disastrous Labour government.
I mean, I have to say, I don't think there'll be many in our audience who don't agree with you in terms of the disastrous state the country is in. There is still this ongoing concern from many on the centre-right, people on the just anywhere right of Labour, which of course makes us all Genghis Khan to them, obviously, that actually the split vote on the right means that, realistically, Labour are going to get in again with yet another big majority because those votes are going to be divided and Labour will get in, and maybe if they've got lower votes, coalition with Lib Dems or others. And a lot of people, certainly the Tories, blame you guys for that.
Oh, but they can't now because actually we're some way ahead of them now and they're going to drift downwards. We're going to keep the momentum, keep going up. So this is all going to turn. And look, there's a long way to go. Competition's a good thing. We're not in any way complacent. But we've got May elections where we're allowed them this May. Obviously, many we're not. They're going to be cancelled.
Well, they're going to be delayed because they're changing the structure of the councils.
Well, ish. But
I think you and Nigel Farage are making rather too much of this. This isn't an affront to democracy.
You don't cancel elections unless you're a dictator. You should have those elections as opposed to delaying them 1 year, or is it 2 years?
Spending hundreds of millions of pounds on elections, which you're only going to elect somebody for another year before, or 6 months before another council.
Supposedly so, we're told, but it's all changed rather quickly. Do you trust them? We don't. One iota. Anyway, the point is we've got May elections. That's the big electoral test. Moving towards the devolved nation elections next May 26. And we're working very hard both in Wales and making great progress in Scotland, where last poll I saw just had us just 1% behind Labour, no less.
Why do you think that you are ahead, not just of Labour? And again, you know, we've got, you know, there's a margin of error about 6 points either side, so it's all, you know, much for muchness, but nevertheless, it is significant. Why do you think you're ahead of the Tories?
Because basically, they failed us. They broke Britain. Nothing worked. They promised one thing. They did exactly the opposite on taxes, on mass immigration. And people are furious because our country is poorer. Everybody is worse off. And the nature of mass immigration has put huge, unsustainable pressure on public services, on our prosperity. And people have had enough, and they won't forgive and they won't forget.
Any sign of that money coming from Elon Musk? Even though you've not changed.
Good question. I'll ring the Treasurer afterwards and find out. No, look, at the end of the day, we're getting donations from our members, which is the key thing. Our membership now over 190,000. And so, look, we've got a broad base of donors. All political parties are always fundraising within.
Have you got a load of Tory donors who've come over?
Well, that's the interesting thing, yes, because at the end of the day, no one likes to donate to a party they can see is actually going down and is losing. So there's a big shift in the attitude of former Tory donors.
Let's talk about something that's happening today. Angela Rayner is convening a council on Islamophobia to define an official definition of Islamophobia in this country, bearing in mind that an all-party group which came up with a definition of Islamophobia in 2018, led by Wes Streeting, also in the cabinet. They came up with a definition completely accepted, you know, all in all forms by the Labour Party, which stated Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. That would, of course, include, you know, perceived Muslim dress, veils and head coverings and the like. What do you make of this? Should we have a definition of Islamophobia, or do we already have one?
Definitely not. Where does it start? Where does it stop? Do you want Christophobia? Do you want Sikhophobia? Forget it. This is a made-up word which is deliberately designed to prevent any form of debate, discussion, criticism of the Islamic faith, and it's designed to scare people, and it's designed to suppress debate, and that's a very, very bad thing in an open democracy like our own. No one should be offensive to religions, and you know we shouldn't be. It's
wait a second, aren't people allowed to be offensive?
You can be offensive, but you can offend. But to do it gratuitously, for example, is very unfortunate. But to say that
should it be criminalised?
No, it shouldn't be criminalised because that's not who we are. It's just not something I would do, and I don't think most rational people.
No, but that's saying, no, I would never dream of burning someone's sacred text. However, I would defend someone else's right to do it.
You don't go out to offend people, but this is a deliberate attempt by the Labour Party to shore up their vote from many people of the Islamic faith. I tell you what, that is changing. We are getting a lot of support from hard-working, aspirational, peace-loving, community-contributing Muslims up and down the country who are saying, we came here legally, we're working here legally, and we're fed up with the illegal migration.
And I was also fed up with the extremist ideology which is being perpetrated by so-called self-appointed community leaders who are often pushing a very different agenda.
That's right. And that tiny, tiny percentage, of course, does so much damage to the people I've just mentioned, those who are actually working hard in their communities and doing the right thing.
Let's talk about tariffs. Donald Trump announced these tariffs, 25% on Mexico and on Canada, 10% on China. Within hours of them about to be coming into force for Mexico and Canada, deals were done, pleasant, very friendly telephone calls were done. Donald Trump has proclaimed this victory, although actually an awful lot of the stuff that has been agreed by Mexico and by Canada was actually stuff that was already on the cards. China, though, 5 o'clock this morning, UK time, those tariffs came into force. China has gone, right, we're retaliating. Are we about to enter a tariff war that could, lots of people think, well, it's happening over there and over there on the other side of the world. It's going to impact all of us and make goods that we rely on more expensive. Are you still supporting your big mate Donald Trump in that?
Absolutely. I think President Trump has had a fantastic start, and he uses tariffs as a negotiating tool to negotiate on behalf of American citizens. That's his job, literally, and he said he was going to do it, and he does it. And things are changing. And people
tariffs make goods more expensive for the American people when the Chinese withhold vital minerals and vital supplies which the whole world relies on. That hits all of us.
We hear all of this economic theory.
It's not economic theory.
Hang on, Julie. He's using it as a negotiating tool, right, to promote American interests and to try and get better deals with people.
I thought you were reform. You're in favour of free trade.
I'm not in favour of abusive...
You're in favour of free trade and high tariffs.
Julia, hear me out.
Which is it?
I'm not in favour of abusive dumping of Chinese steel here in the UK made to completely different standards from the great British steel made in Port Talbot or Scunthorpe. That's the sort of thing...
Well, that's subsidised by the Chinese, which they're not supposed to be doing.
That's right. But at the end of the day, Trump is using tariffs as a negotiating tool. He wants his borders protected.
No, I just want to clarify. No. So you're in favour of free trade, except when tariffs are used as a negotiating tool by your big mate Trump.
Hang on. Isn't the role of any leader... No, Julia, the role of any leader...
The reasons you wanted to get out of the EU is so we could have free trade.
The role of any leader... So we wouldn't
have to pose tariffs on goods coming into us from outside the EU. But if Donald Trump does it, it's fine.
No, the whole point of free trade is you negotiate trade agreements to remove tariffs because you think... But you only negotiate...
Because tariffs are bad, aren't they?
Because you only do it if it works for you, which is why you do partial trade deals. Because sometimes you have different standards, sometimes it doesn't work for you.
You need to protect vital industries.
And sometimes you've got to protect vital interests, like our farming and like our steel industry, because it's strategically, nationally important.
Do you think we're going to get tariffs from the United States?
Well, let's
Donald Trump has said we're kind of in some middle ground.
The joy of Brexit, of course, is that actually he might put tariffs on the EU, but as he said briefly on the TV, he said the UK looks like a different situation.
If he puts tariffs on the EU and the EU retaliates, we will be caught in the middle, and our British people will have to pay the impact. The impact of tariffs is that consumers, my audience, your voters, Labour voters, will all have to pay more for stuff they need to buy.
Well, let's wait and see, shall we? Let's see what happens. There's no guarantees that he's going to put tariffs on UK goods. We do have, of course, the US is our biggest single trading partner, has our biggest
country, it's the biggest country. As a bloc, the EU is a bigger trading partner.
Yeah, but that's made of many countries. They are our single biggest trading partner as a nation, and our most important in terms of investment. So let's wait and see. But at the end of the day, the leader of our country should be negotiating on behalf of the UK and think of UK citizens, what's right for us first, and take everything in the round. And that's the point that Donald Trump does, and that's what our Prime Minister should be doing. And I'm afraid cozying up to a failing recessionary model of the EU is the wrong thing for Starmer to do.
Well, I mean, certainly I think my audience and I would certainly agree on that. We talked about that on the show yesterday. Particularly cozying up to sort of carbon rules that the EU has got. What do you make of that?
Well, it's completely the wrong thing to go. We've got the highest electricity prices, and we've got
in the world,
the lunacy of what I call net stupid zero, which is increasing bills, it's increasing our cost of living. We'll scrap all of that. And here's breaking news, Julia. Martin Lewis, trusted consumer champion, has just confirmed that actually the average expected increase for the electricity price cap in April is going to go up another 5%.
That's Ofgem,
that's the Ofgem for the energy regulator for the price cap on electricity bills. That would mean 16% higher than last summer. What that means is actually the proof's in the pudding. Renewables are not cheaper, they're more expensive, and Ed Miliband is misleading the whole nation. When are the bills going to come down, Julia?
Well, it's interesting because even the boss of GB Energy can't presume to predict when that's going to happen. Just finally, I want to ask you about this horrific school stabbing yesterday. Not just, I mean, it's bad enough it's on a bus on the way home or in the street on the way home. We've seen kids being stabbed to death only the last few weeks on that. It's bad enough, obviously we saw the Axel Rudy Cabana. He wanted to go and stab kids in his high school, instead chose a dance class. I mean, just awful, awful story. Yesterday, a 15-year-old boy was stabbed to death inside his school. Another 15-year-old boy is under arrest on suspicion of murder. We understand from the police that the school was in lockdown only a week ago. In lockdown, kids hiding under their desks, locked in their classrooms because of the threat of violence from a group of children. Now, there's an awful lot going around the internet. There's stuff that obviously we can't say on air because we don't want to prejudice if charges are brought and any future trial, and it does involve 15-year-olds. But it does appear that a child was able to bring a knife into school and was also then able possibly to bring a knife into school on a second occasion. What do we do about this?
It's horrific, and it's a symptom of what's happening in our society. There's no fear, there's no deterrent, and it's now cool to carry a knife. In the same way, I'm afraid, in America, it's cool to carry a gun. And we've got to clamp down. There has to be a full deterrent. And in fairness, some schools previously, they had scans, metal detector scans that children were walking through. Really, I mean, horrendous.
I think if you need to have a metal detector...
But if you need to have it, you need to have it.
I think if you need to have it, then you need to send your kid to a different school.
What a terrible indication of the failure of our society, but that's where it's ending up. It's horrific.
Indeed. Very much appreciate you joining us. Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform at UK, 10:49 is time. Going to talk to Claire Pearsall up next. Also talk to Ivor Sampson, an immigration lawyer, about yet another crackdown on small boats. This time we're doing it with the Italian PM, Giorgia Meloni. Well, at least you know she actually wants to do it. That's up next. This is Talk.
Harry's records should be released for everyone to see, and we believe that if Harry lied on his immigration application, that's a criminal offence, and he should face deportation if he lied on his application. So let's see exactly what Harry had to say on his application. In his book Spare, his own memoir, he talked about extensive illegal drug use. Harry should be held to account, just like anyone else.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Claire Pearson still with me, former Conservative Government Advisor. What did you make of our chat with Richard Dyson? Interesting, particularly on the tariff issue.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Because it just seems that, I think you're quite right to push him on it, that if Donald Trump does it, it's okay. All right.
They're free traders in reform.
Yeah, they are, and they should be a little bit more wary of what Donald Trump is bringing in the form of tariffs, which are going to hit consumers really hard.
It's really interesting, actually. I think an awful lot of people are going to go, well, again, it's happening over there, it's over there, it's nothing to do with us, even if it is EU, we're out. We are going to be hit by this.
Yeah.
There are so many items that I mean, particularly like China retaliating. I mean, there's no... Xi Jinping was not going to kowtow, for want of a better phrase.
No, of course he wasn't, and he doesn't need to. And he knows he's got that much power. He knows that he's got the leverage, so he doesn't care what anybody thinks of him, and he doesn't particularly care the electoral position in his country is very different.
We've now
to
basically got two big buffaloes, kind of like with big egos bashing up against each other. I mean, you'd always guess that Trudeau would cave. I mean, he's a failed prime minister. You know, I mean, I say excuse for a man, but I mean, he really is just, God, I've never met a man. I mean, no one could love him as much as he loves himself. But he absolutely ruined Canada. He really did. Let's talk about immigration, particularly migrant boats. Keir Starmer and the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who, by the way, was once declared as a fascist. You know, she was just a fascist, wasn't she? Till she got in, and then, by the way, defied everywhere else, all the other incumbents, by getting an even bigger majority. She's agreed a deal with the Prime Minister to allow police forces from both countries to work together to launch what they call a mafia-style crackdown on migrant boats. I think what they mean is it's a crackdown as they would on the mafia. I don't think, otherwise it sounds a bit strange, doesn't it? But they're going to share intelligence on money linked to criminal gangs involved in people smuggling. They're going to seize money and assets from the gangs. She says that she's in tune with the British PM on these issues. Now, we know that she's serious about this because this was how she got elected. I mean, this was the, tackling this issue. You think we've got a problem here? Wow, we ain't seen nothing yet. The number of boats arriving on Italian shores. Do you think is this the one that's going to work?
No, and
you were in the Home Office.
We have these powers in place already, and information sharing does happen. Now, you can get further cooperation from countries when it comes to financial records, but the UK is not going to be able to seize any money that is found on a smuggler in Italy. I don't think they do it through backs, like they put it through the bank accounts. This is from this is from Mohammed, whoever, who paid me $5,000 for this, but it's not. Everything's in. It's in suitcases full of euros and cash. Precisely. These are people that deal in cash, suitcases, dirty notes. They're not going to have lovely, clean records and dates of people giving them money and how much they've given them and what did they get a refund. They're not going to work like that. No, I mean, that's the thing. But again, we were told he was going to smash the gangs. Again, I've always said, this is just the same. You cut off the head of one, one head, and another one is going to appear. There is too much money involved. It's like taking down the drugs mafia, in Colombia. Someone else will pop up because there's too much money to be made. What you need to do is take away the demand to come to this country. That's the number one thing. Now, we were very much hoping to speak to immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson about this, but unfortunately we're having a tech problem, so we're going to leave that. But I do want to ask you about something else. Lucy Letby, her lawyers right now have been giving a press conference in central London. They have said that they're speaking on behalf of the convicted child serial killer. She's a mass murderer. They've applied to the Criminal Cases Review Commission to investigate her case as a potential miscarriage of justice. She's serving 15 whole life prison sentences after being convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others, including one she attacked twice. All the offences took place over a year between June 2015 and June 2016 while she was a neonatal nurse at the Countess of Chester Hospital. The lawyers claim that actually, the evidence suggests that a number of these babies died when she wasn't on duty. There's some of the statistical evidence. They're claiming that she's just a victim of a terrible miscarriage of justice. There has already been there's an inquiry ongoing. They've finished taking evidence, but there have been appeals already, I've been reading up on this. Every time people, Peter Hitchens or David Davis, who's a Tory MP who's doing this, there's a very senior medic who's actually his evidence was used for the prosecution
and wasn't queried by the defence. And he's saying, no, actually, I think I was misrepresented in my evidence. And he's speaking right now. I haven't seen anything that suggests to me this woman is guilty. Sorry, not guilty. I haven't. But is it not right that there is a proper review and that this is all laid open to either put this to rest for once and for all, or to discover if it is a terrible miscarriage of justice, something else has killed those babies, a failure in the hospital, or, I don't know, another killer.
Yeah.
And we need to find out, because other babies might die otherwise.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely right that if there is any doubt over any of those deaths, then there should be a proper investigation into it. It's not just for Lucy Letby, because there are all of those people who say that she should be free and she's not guilty. I don't think it is for that. I think you need to look at the facts and you need to see if anybody else was involved. Yeah. And you're right, somebody else could well be on the loose in other hospitals, and that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It seems more likely to me that if she were innocent, that actually what had happened is the abject failings in this hospital. We know this hospital was failing simply because of the way they dealt with the claims from the doctors, the consultants who said, we think Lucy Letby has been there every time a child dies. We are worried that she's killing babies, or at least allowing them to die. It's just an extraordinary case. But I think for the good of the nation, I think we do need to have something open. But a lot of the arguments have been given by people who supported her about the chances of her being the only nurse on duty. That was almost irrelevant to the case. That wasn't the evidence that was brought up in court. And bearing in mind, the jury took many, many weeks to provide. It was many long months case, and the jury took weeks and weeks to decide their verdicts. And they didn't give guilty verdicts. It wasn't across the board. Some were, they couldn't agree. Others were not guilty. I think that, considered decisions. I'm pretty sure they got the decision right, but I think it's a good idea for us to find out either way for sure, as much as we can. We're going to talk more about that throughout the show. Plenty more coming up. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense, coming up to 3 minutes past 11. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it's great to have you company. However, you are getting in touch as well. Lots of you are getting in touch about Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister. She's setting up a council on Islamophobia because, of course, it's genuine. It's the biggest issue. It's the biggest issue this country is facing. Oh, we talk about it all the time, don't we? What a big issue it is. Deep sighs. She wants advice on an official government definition for anti-Muslim discrimination. Apparently, the man being lined up to lead this body is former Conservative Attorney General Remainer-in-Chief Dominic Grieve. By the way, he's happily signed up to that previous definition that we've had, which the Labour Party has fully accepted, which is that Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. But I mean, for a start, there's no race, actually. There's no Muslim race. You can be, I know, I have friends who are white who are Muslim, you have black Muslim friends, OK, but also expressions of Muslimness. Well, that would include simply somebody, wearing Islamic dress, a woman covering her face or even wearing a hijab. I mean, aren't you allowed to criticise that? Or is that Islamophobia? Love to hear your thoughts on this. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can message us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. We'll get to your calls in the next half hour. Also going to be talking more about the just absolutely awful story of a 15-year-old boy fatally stabbed at school in Sheffield yesterday. He's been named locally as Harvey Wilgoose, a pupil at All Saints Catholic High School. South Yorkshire Police say another 15-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murder and remains in police custody. Also going to be talking about those fat jabs, which are constantly in the news. Oh, they're perfect, they're good for everybody. Except an awful lot of people are getting them who really shouldn't be using them. I would say everybody shouldn't be using them, but that's just me. But online pharmacies are now going to have to employ stricter checks to prevent people who are already a healthy weight or have a history of eating disorders from buying weight loss jabs like Ozempic, Wegovy and Mounjaro. I mean, as if those checks are really going to work. Well, we'll talk about all of that. Love to hear your thoughts on all of those topics and plenty more besides. Joining me, going to get her thoughts on everything, Claire Pearce, or former Conservative Government Advisor. Thank you so much for staying with us.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate that. We're all going to, by the way, get Ivan Sampson, our immigration lawyer, back on to talk about Giorgia Meloni and migrant gangs, because I do want to get his thoughts. We'll go to that in about 10 minutes. But let's talk about Angela Rayner. Why do we need a definition of Islamophobia?
We don't.
OK, move on. Next subject.
we could get through government really quickly in this.
Couldn't we? We could Elon Musk this stuff, couldn't we?
We could, absolutely. It would save everybody time and money. But no, we don't need to have this definition. And I think it risks bringing our society at odds with each other, giving minority groups actually more power and demand special treatment.
Yes, no one should have special. I've always thought that actually, this idea that you can't criticise, the Quran or Islamic dress or any practices of Islamic religion. Yeah. It's rather demeaning and patronising towards Muslim people that they somehow can't cope with a joke or can't cope with any criticism or debate. I mean, I'm an atheist. I'm quite happy to defend my atheism to anybody and stand up for my views. Yeah. Quite happy to be criticised for it. I don't mind. Freedom of speech. Believe what you want. I will march in the streets for your right to believe anything you want. Yeah. But as long as you don't impose it on me. I've really got a problem with you imposing it on me or other people. And you can believe what you want, but you don't expect me to show, other than just sort of bare minimum of not being abusive to you. I mean, of course. Again, I'm not going to mock somebody outside a mosque or outside a church or outside a Scientology building. I mean, that's demeaning to the person who does it. You don't need to do that. It's rude, but it shouldn't be criminalised. It shouldn't be criminalised. But I reserve the right in a free country without a blasphemy law, officially, that we should be allowed to criticise every religion and every religious teaching and practice, clothing and everything. And that doesn't make you Islamophobic. Because I neither fear nor hate people of Muslim faith. So that should not be part of it.
No, it shouldn't. So you shouldn't have to show deference to somebody because of their beliefs. You can not be rude to somebody. Absolutely, you wouldn't be rude to anybody in that respect.
Oh, I quite like being rude to people, but not because of their faith.
Not for their faith. Not for their faith. But you can have a conversation about it. And the majority of Muslims that I know are quite happy to have a conversation, tell me what it is they believe. I challenge them back with, really, is that quite what it says? And you have a proper conversation. But these are people who are just living their life. They have a faith. It's not the front foremost thing you know about.
Let us stop talking about as if all Christians agree on everything. All Christian archbishops don't agree on everything, let alone all Christians. We don't expect all atheists to agree on everything, or all Sikhs. So, but miraculously, the Muslim community, again, all these self-appointed leaders. I mean, by the way, one of whom, on this council, a council to guide the government on Islamophobia, among the 16 candidates shortlisted to sit on this council is Qari Azim, a Leeds imam. He was dismissed as a government advisor by the Tories a couple of years ago because he backed calls for a ban on the film about the Prophet Muhammad's daughter, the Lady of Heaven, where there were outrageous mobs outside a cinema demanding that film wasn't shown. Sorry, every single person in that mob should have been arrested, let alone given into, which they were, by people who were frightened. No one did anything to protect the cinema, the cinemas running these films. It's absolutely outrageous. The idea that he's being considered to be on this council. Also, I wonder how many non-Muslims or how many atheists. How many people like me do they have? Or do they have someone from the Free Speech Union on that council? I probably think not. But it's just outrageous, isn't it? It really is. Let's also talk about tariff wars. Yeah. It looks like Donald Trump has had a big win with Canada and with Mexico, his two nearest neighbours, his biggest trading partners in the United States. Basically, 25% tariffs were going to be imposed on a huge number of goods, both countries. Before they even came into effect, they've now been, they have been cancelled, they've been paused for 30 days. Lovely, warm, friendly phone calls with both the Canadian leader and the Mexican president, and that's kind of all off now. He claims he's got a win. He's got them to patrol their borders, stop migrants, and stop the issue with, of course, with these drugs coming in as well, fentanyl. I didn't realise there was a big issue with people coming from Canada to America, given the way that the Canadian government treats immigrants, legal or otherwise. I'd have thought you're better off staying in Canada, personally, but there we are. Maybe they couldn't bear Trudeau either. Even the illegal migrants don't want to stay in Canada. But not such luck with the Chinese. 10% tariffs on China came into force UK time at 5 o'clock this morning. Immediate retaliatory tariffs back from China. As we were discussing with Richard Tice a little bit earlier, the Reform Committee, they're supposed to be for free trade, but these are political negotiations, but they have an economic impact on ordinary people, don't they?
Yeah, they absolutely do. And when you're looking at putting those tariffs on Mexico and Canada, for the American citizen, that is going to push up the cost enormously for a lot of things like fuel, cars.
I could have hit the avocados for the woke as well.
Or there's no breakfast for them, no avocado on toast.
What are they going to do? Got to think about the important stuff.
But equally, when you look at the politics of it, you've got Donald Trump, who has played hardball and said these are the tariffs, they're going to go on. Mexico has said, OK, right, do you know what? We'll do it. We'll do what you want. So each country realistically will back down and say, I spoke to Donald Trump and I was hardball, and this is what we've got. And Trump is saying, you saw what I was willing to do. They back down. We've still got border guards out on the border, so everything is fine.
I mean, because some of the stuff that was announced as a big win, I mean, like the number of border guards. I mean, for a start, 10,000 border guards on a 2,000 mile border. It's not really that many. I mean, what Trudeau agreed to. I mean, this was actually something that was already agreed. They were already going to be their border police on this. The security plan had already been announced by Canada in December. Apparently, and basically they're going to have an enhanced coordination with US law enforcement, increased information sharing. I mean, there is an issue on the migrant border, but at the end of the day, it is the job of a country to protect their own borders. I don't think it's France's job to protect our borders. It's our job to protect our borders. Our government has failed at it repeatedly under every political hue. But it's our job, fundamentally. And it's Donald Trump's job as President of America to protect his borders. And if you want to have border guards, well, then have border guards. But if you've got the military and the economic might that America has, you can make those threats, OK? We're not in a position to make those threats to France and the EU, but America is. But China is a different matter. China is the second biggest economy in the world. The whole world relies on China, not just for all these cheap exports, which keep our inflationary rate down. They also rely on them for many of the key components of pretty much every tech thing we have, whether it's chips, whether it's the solar panels we're all going to, the wind turbines we're going to rely on, huge amounts of rare metals, pretty much all controlled by China now. By the way, major security failing by the West, this one.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think that we've all played into needing China and we must be friends with them without thinking of what are the consequences.
Yeah.
And what you've got is a nation that can do exactly as it pleases. The tariffs are going to make absolutely no difference to them.
Yeah.
They're going to force tariffs on to America.
Doesn't have to worry about an election.
It doesn't. And he doesn't care, Xi Jinping doesn't care what people think of him at all.
No, exactly.
Really, really doesn't.
Exactly.
And it's only going to make things more expensive for us. And I think people don't get that just because it's happening to America that it wouldn't affect us, because it absolutely
No, exactly.
will.
Tell you what's also going to be more expensive for us is when our council tax goes up. Pretty much everywhere is going to put it up by 5%. But, again, Angela Rayner, back in the news. Deputy Prime Minister and, of course, Housing Secretary. She has signed off on council tax rises of up to 10% for more than 3 million people. That's going to be affecting Newham in East London, Bradford, Windsor and Maidenhead, which I find extraordinary because they're the ones going up the most. Birmingham, we know, bankrupt council, and Somerset and Trafford. A vast range of different councils, involving rural areas and very, very, poor inner city areas as well. But we're looking at council tax going up by 150 quid plus in some of these areas, but council tax bills in 21 areas are set to top your typical band D, 2.5 grand when they increase in April. Most people don't have that spare money. They really just, it's not a question of they don't have that money. We're constantly told we're going to feel better off. Well, as Richard Tice just revealed off Gem, they're looking at our heating bills, our electricity bills are going to be going up. Our inflation is still going up for food. We're not seeing that going down, and we've actually seen a lot of it hasn't gone very much up, but the actual packet's got smaller. People's wage rises have not kept up for most people. Unless you've moved jobs, most people's wage rises haven't kept up, unless you're a train driver. And I mean, we are in just an absolute nightmare here for an awful lot of people on low incomes and on middle incomes.
Oh yeah, this is going to really put a burden onto people's expenses and what they can afford to have. And I think if they saw that they were getting something extra, they were getting something more, you can just about swallow it, But this isn't. This is for your basic services.
There's some more zebra crossings painted in rainbow flags.
Superb. That gets people out of bed in the morning.
That's what I pay my council tax for. I don't know about you.
Bins. I just want my bins empty.
Don't start me on the bins.
I like this subject.
I can do bins 3 hours every day without taking a breath.
It's brilliant.
Without taking a breath.
But that's what people want. People want the services in their
area. Empty my bins once a week. Empty my bins once a week. That's all I want. Street lights, potholes, empty my bins once a week. Make sure some little old ladies get food and someone to wash them. Everything else, stop doing it.
Yes.
Stop doing it. I mean, that's all we want. Deep sighs, everybody. I do want to hear from you. Do get your calls in about Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner, not about council tax in this occasion, although you can call in on that, but setting up a council to create an official government definition of Islamophobia. It's the biggest issue, isn't it, today? It's what we really, really absolutely need, don't we? Dividing people once again and basically criminalising people for giving their opinion, because God forbid people should do that. Give us a call 0344 499 1000. Just before we go to a break there, I do want to get in immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson, who joins us. We were hoping to speak to him just before 11, but we had a problem with the line. But we've got him back up, I'm delighted to say, and he joins us. Good morning to you, Ivan.
Good morning, Julia. So nice to talk to you again.
We did not want to miss out on a little Ivan hit this morning, my darling. Now, look, Keir Starmer, we understand, is working with the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni. They've agreed a deal to basically pool their resources. Police forces from both sides are going to sort of do this crackdown on migrant boats, the same way they tackle organised crime like the mafia. They're basically going to be seizing cash and tracking money and the like. Is this the final way we actually are going to smash the gangs, Ivan?
I don't think so. I think look,
not a surprise.
These gangs, they're not centralised, and that's a problem.
Wait a minute, they don't have a completely organised system where they just channel money through bank accounts with their names on?
Well, no, there's pockets of
Oh, goodness me, Ivan, this line is very...
gangs that operate. And when...
No, I'm sorry, we're going to have to give up. I'm so sorry to you and indeed to Ivan that we just simply couldn't get the line up to good quality. I do apologise for that. Here's another thing I'd like the government to do. Can we please just have phone signals and everything everywhere? We're a first world country. I want it to work on trains. I want it to work everywhere. I want it to work in, the tube or in buses. I want it to work everywhere. In the rural areas, can we just put up some phone masts? Can we just have this stuff working? This is how we're supposed to be living now. Can we just get this working? How are we talking about sending people to Mars, for God's sake? And we can't make a phone signal work.
Halfway through my train journey, it goes to 3G. One bar.
What even is that anymore?
Bar. I don't know, but I can't get anything on my phone at that point. It's rubbish. It's utter rubbish. And that is 20 miles from London.
Well, exactly, but...
It's not the middle of Mars, is it?
I know, but it's like, okay, I can understand if you live on an outer Hebridean island, you might not expect to be having the fastest broadband or something, but for the love of God.
South East England.
Can we? Well, no, the rest of the country. There are lots more I want to talk about, including Lucy Letby, and they've got an appeal to the Criminal Cases Review Board coming from her lawyers. They are saying lots of the lawyers and medical experts in a press conference today are saying they do believe that there is no evidence that she did commit any murder. She, of course, is serving life behind bars for 7 murders of babies and 7 attempted murders as well. We'll bring you up to date on that later in the show. Lots more to come. Your call's up next. 0344 499 1000. Give us a call on any other topics we're talking about. Happy to take your calls on bins all day, as you know, but I do particularly want to know about, do we need a definition of Islamophobia? And what should it be? Give us a call. Love to hear from you. This is Talk.
Starmer cannot align himself with anything that the United States is doing because his own base will tear chunks out of him, and they'll go, but you're enabling a fascist and this, that, and the really sensible and mature way that they respond to everything.
Yes.
So he can't do that, even though he is looking right now at what's happening and thinking, if you were to pick a side in the upcoming fight between the EU and the US, there's no question which side you'd pick. You go with the one that's actually got the economic growth, that has the sort of...
And could give you a trade deal away from a bloc that we voted to leave.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm just trying to finish a cupcake for my wonderful executive producer Ted's birthday. I just stolen one of his cupcakes. Very happy birthday, Ted. He's the guy who makes this all happen, by the way. Fantastic team here, but Ted is our man. He's looking horrified at being mentioned him. I didn't say your full name. It's all right. No one knows it's you. Anyway, just finishing that cupcake. Claire's been very good and hasn't had one, making me feel guilty. But anyway, I'll have hers later. Let's get to your calls coming in about Islamophobia, because Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner is setting up a council to create an official government definition of Islamophobia, because they're not quite sure what it is. They've already had, of course, a meeting back when they were in opposition, and a council set up, and actually, well, an all-party parliamentary group. Where Streeting was chairing it, where the Labour took on this full definition of Islamophobia and is absolutely convinced. They're very clear about what Islamophobia is, and it's basically anyone who's critical of any expression of Muslimness. Well, I mean, doesn't that include clothing and things? We're not allowed to criticise clothing now. Does that make us Islamophobic? Love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Let's get some of your messages. Jessica says, will Angela be looking at something similar for the growing number of anti-Semitism complaints? I understand, actually, Jewish leaders have actually said we don't want a redefinition. We know what anti-Semitism is, don't we? Joanne says, this is a literal blasphemy law. Not only is it dangerous, but we are now setting up another quango, waste of taxpayers' money. Alan says, totally crazy, they can't define a woman, but this is easy. I mean, Alan, tweeted the message of the day. Absolutely love that. It's true. If you don't know that all women don't have penises, yes. I'm not sure you can define this. Varia says, to learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticise. And Rod says, we don't need such a definition with existing legislation which manages this equally for everyone. If we start looking to legislate for individual groups, we will start down a very slippery slope. I don't think it is equal at the moment, actually. I think, actually, it's already unequal. Judith is on the line. She's in Gloucestershire. Hi, Judith.
Hi, the brewer.
The brewer. I like that. How are you, the Judith? What do you want to say?
It's about Islamophobia. What about anti-Semitism? Because I've never understood anti-Semitism. I mean, they've never tried to blow us up or shoot us or stab us or anything. And the thing is, if we don't believe in the Jews, we're not infidels, aren't we? Like we are with the Muslims. So why can't we have one into anti-Semitism? I would love Talk to have an anti-Semite on to explain what is anti-Semitism, because I don't understand it.
Well, that's interesting. It's often been separated from other races. I'd like to just query you that. And again, I'm not PC. You know, I don't do any of that stuff. But it's not Muslims who have been trying to blow us up, and I mean Islamist attacks. It's Islamists. It's an Islamist political ideology that's being pushed and is allowed to be being pushed by many imams in mosques in this country and by hate preachers. And we should absolutely stop it from happening, and we should root it out much earlier. And frankly, we need to take serious action now. But it's not Muslims. You know, the biggest victims of Islamism, Muslims. They're the ones who are most likely to have their lives ruined or indeed be killed. So I do want to give that caveat. But you're right. I don't understand anyone hating someone because of their religion or their race or their ethnicity. I think it's weird.
Yes, it is. But I think anti-Semitism, I mean, when you think it's gone on for thousands of years, and I don't understand the basis of it. I know back to Jesus Christ and all that, but, you know, nowadays it just seems ludicrous.
I thought it was something that was long gone. Certainly in my teenage years, living in North London with the largest Jewish population in the country. I wonder whether there's more concern about Islamophobia in Labour because, of course, there are far more. There are millions of Muslims in this country, but there are actually only, I think, a few 100,000, 250,000, I think, possibly Jewish people in this country. So I wonder where, it's voting priorities that are the concern. Judith, thank you for that call. Andrew's on the line in Bristol. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Judith. Very good morning to you.
Very good morning. What do you want to say?
Great show as usual.
Oh, you're very kind.
What I'm on to say is, if we're looking for a definition of Islamophobia, there isn't one. A phobia is a fear of something.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid of Islam.
No.
In fact, nobody in their right mind would be afraid of Islam, except perhaps if they're being threatened by a guy with a machete.
But you're not. No, but I don't think we should be afraid of an ideology or a religious text or religion. But I'm definitely afraid of Islamism, that political ideology, because that political ideology thinks that non-Muslims should deserve to die. So I'm afraid of that.
Well, yeah, I agree with you on that one, but I also agree with you on the philosophy, is that people are allowed to believe anything they like, as long as they don't impose it on other people.
Yeah. I mean, I even object to sort of people knocking on my door. Let me tell you about my God. No, I don't want you to. Don't come to my door and bother me. If you want to do it on the street, I've got the option of walking past. But don't make me come and open my door to you.
Yeah, as soon as people start preaching, it switches me straight
yeah,
off.
Absolutely. But you just basically say we simply don't need a definition. I mean, what do you make of the definition which Labour has accepted? Islamophobia is rooted in racism, is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. Do you agree with that?
No. And the reason I don't agree with it is because Muslim is not a race.
Yeah. Ta-da.
It's basically a religion. Like I say, people can believe what they like, but as long as they don't impose it on other people.
Yeah, and again, people can believe what they like, but they also have to accept the fact that we are allowed to criticise and mock. Mocking religion, mocking people in power, organisations and belief systems is what you are allowed to do in a free country. But it seems to me that we only have a blasphemy law, but only for one country, one religion. Sorry, Andrew, thank you for that. Claire Pissell, interesting what both of those guests say. Yeah. Is this the biggest issue facing the country right now? No, because no. Of course, we've got lots of other issues. We've got cost of living, we've got other issues, but there is a growing concern, and I think that this is an awful lot of what the growing support for Reform UK, and we've seen that in the polls, topping even Labour in the polls. Anger at Labour, anger at the Tories on their failures, having talked a good game, to tackle the issue of the cultural changes in our country. This ties in with the Southport riots, post the Axel Cabana murder. It ties into the threats on our streets, two-tier policing, two-tier justice. What we've been seeing on the streets every 2 weeks since October the 7th, 2023, I defended the right, I defend the right of people to go on a protest march, but when you insist on walking past a synagogue on a Saturday, and you're still doing your marches, even when there is a ceasefire, maybe it's not really about wanting to help the Palestinian people. Maybe it's just because you support a terrorist organisation and you hate Jewish people, which is basically what I believe that march is about. Sue me. If you're on that march and you don't hate Jewish people, feel free to sue me. We have got an issue. We've got a massive cultural divide. There's an awful lot of people who've arrived in this country over the last 10, 20 years, and their children growing up. And I don't think like fundamentally Islam is incompatible with Western values, because I know plenty of Muslims who live perfectly peaceful, happy, productive lives, no issues, integrated as well. But there is an issue with this political ideology, which is imbued in large parts of the Islamic world, in the Middle East, and in Pakistan, where a lot of Muslims in this country are coming from, where, frankly, it is an extremist view. It is incompatible with Western values of liberalism and freedom, women's equality, gay rights, etc. And too many politicians are too squeamish to say that.
They are, and what it's become is it's been allowed to grow and it's been allowed to go unchallenged, because people were wringing their hands saying, well, we can't possibly go and criticise those people because that would be racist. And it isn't. You can go and challenge beliefs that are being preached on your streets, shouted into people's faces, that do not...
taught to children in their schools.
Exactly,
and
it shouldn't. And it shouldn't go unchallenged, it really shouldn't. And if those people were in any way reasonable, they would understand that and they would have that conversation. But they're not. There are other things that drive them.
But the reality is, of course, we are now in a situation where you're looking at millions and millions of people who... I mean, again, the polling suggests that it's a small percentage of Muslims in this country that share that more extremist political ideology. However, it's also still an awful lot of people.
Yeah, it is, and it's, as I say, it's going unchallenged, and it's only going to get bigger.
If you're not going to be challenging people who are making death threats to people for simply, mocking the Quran or showing a cartoon of Prophet Muhammad, then I'm sorry. If you're not challenging that, then you're basically saying that's okay, and it's not.
No.
Okay.
No, it's not.
11:32 is the time. Do welcome more of your calls at 0344 499 1000. Welcome your thoughts also on all the other big topics, including council tax going up and, of course, also Keir Starmer and his voice coach. Was it a breach of lockdown rules? And also talking more about those tariffs as well imposed by Trump. Has he winning the tariffs war, or are we all going to be the losers? Up next, going to be talking about that absolutely horrific murder of a 15-year-old boy stabbed to death at school. Another 15-year-old boy held in custody. We'll talk about that with former Met Police Detective Chief Inspector Peter Kirkham. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Keir Pierce is still with us, and we're joined now by Peter Kirkham. He's a former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector, talking about this just absolutely horrific story, which is just doesn't even feel like it's sort of, you know, that rare a story, although it is actually rare that a child would be stabbed to death in their actual school. Only in recent weeks we've had children stabbed to death on a school bus on the way home, walking on the way home in broad daylight, other teenagers arrested for those crimes. This time around, a 15-year-old boy named locally as Harvey Wilgis was stabbed at his school, in the school grounds at All Saints Catholic High School in Granville Road in the city, just around 12:15. The school, we learnt, has actually previously gone into lockdown only a week ago with boys with knives threatening violence. Obviously, something that seems to be sort of considered normal these days, is it? Another 15-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murder and remains in police custody, South Yorkshire Police have said. Peter Kirkham, joining us now. I mean, look, we can never get to a situation where this is the norm. I don't want it to be the situation where this is an equivalent of America's situations where children have to practice going into lockdown if there's a gunman on the loose. But the idea of a 15-year-old boy being stabbed to death in his school, the suspect being another 15-year-old boy, terrifyingly doesn't surprise me.
Yes, I think it's only been a matter of time before something like this tragically has happened. Yep. We know that knives are carried by young people that overlap into school age, certainly the 14, 15, 16-year-old bracket. We know that youths of those ages and younger have been found carrying knives in schools. And if you carry a knife, sooner or later, someone is going to use it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Unfortunately, it's just a matter of time.
Well, we understand, and the police, and we obviously have to be careful because if there are charges brought, obviously, we want to not prejudice the child, but we understand that the school, interestingly, it's been rated good by Ofsted. It's been inspected the last couple of years. Apparently, they've got a strong ethos of warmth and respect. People didn't seem to have an issue with this school, but we understand that only a week ago, this school was in lockdown. When children threatening violence were in the school, there have been messages online, children, basically hiding under their desks in locked classrooms. I mean, I don't know about you, Peter. This didn't ever happen in my comp. I'm guessing it didn't happen in your school either. The kids weren't even talking about this as something unusual.
It is unusual. We might feel that it's more common than it is. In schools, it is unusual still to have this level of violence there. It's not unusual for there to be disturbances. It's not unusual for there to be violence, but it is unusual for it to result in someone's death from stabbing.
The head teacher, Sean Pender, had sent a message to parents on the 29th of January about a lockdown at the site, and he said the action was due to threatening behaviour between a small number of students. Now, we're told, we must avoid speculation and sharing of content online, but there is a lot of content online. Let's talk hypothetically. If it were the case that a teenage boy came into school with a knife, threatened to stab another pupil with or without other children, other boys or girls involved, and appeared at the school a week later and did stab that pupil, would we not be questioning why that child was allowed back into the school? I would expect as a parent, if any child brought a knife into the school under any circumstances, that child was instantly expelled, not suspended, instantly expelled. Certainly never allowed back there, and instant action, police action and interventions would take place. We know from the Axel Rudiger-Partner case that he had planned. He'd gone in and attacked kids at his old high school, went in with a hockey stick and had beaten someone, actually, got a broken hand as a result. We know he had planned to go and stab pupils at his old school on the final day, and it was only his father intervening, stopping the cab driver. This was just, a week before the horrific stabbings at Southport that left 3 girls dead and many others injured. And again, he'd been found with a knife on previous occasions on a bus, had a knife with him when he was trying to go back to that school. He'd been attacked. Why is it that police and the authorities, the schools, are not catching these kids sooner?
I think they often are caught sooner, but where you've got an intervention by police or somebody else removing a knife before it's used, before it's even brandished, whilst it's just found in someone's pocket or in their bag, we know that the sentences that are given by the courts, if it even reaches the courts, are totally inadequate.
Yeah.
More concerning, where a knife is brandished, where a knife is used but isn't used in a fatal way, that sort of near miss, and they all are near misses, because there are things that you don't control yourself when you are using a knife. There are things that are beyond your control that could be the difference between life and death for the victim.
Yeah.
And so every use of a knife is a near miss, and yet they're not treated as near miss murders.
Yeah, but exactly, that's the thing.
The sentences are inadequate.
Absolutely, and again, serious intervention. Why are you carrying a knife? What is your purpose? Are you fearful? What's happening at home? What's happening in your local area? We need to have these full-on interventions. This seems to me to be a much better use of police time and the authorities' time than dealing with the aftermath and dealing with the child on a morgue slab. I just can't imagine a scenario. It was bad enough we're talking about kids going to a Taylor Swift, summer club. And not coming out alive. A child going to school, you need to be able to, as a parent, just go, yeah, my kid's in school, my kid's safe.
We need to do everything possible to prevent these sorts of things, and there's a lot more that could be done as part of the reaction to those non-fatal interventions where a knife is found, someone's known to be carrying a knife on one occasion. Yeah. You could make a law that said that those people are subject to random stop and search without any cause whatsoever for a period of 12 months or 3 years or whatever it might be.
I'd search them every day.
Indeed, and that could be included in a school policy that if you've been found with a knife in school, you're going to get searched and shaken by the ankles every morning to see what falls out of your pockets.
I just don't want that kid in my kid's school.
It won't stop it.
I know. I think that kid should be in a special unit. I'm sorry. We've got to look after the interests of the most kids rather than. Can I also ask you about another case? I mean, again, we're going to see where the charges are brought. We'll see what happens. But I cannot imagine what those parents of Harvey Wilgus are going through right now, and the other parents at the school as well, knowing that inadequate safeguards. But let's talk about Lucy Letby. It's been a press conference this morning from medics. One, indeed, was actually used by the prosecution in the case against Lucy Letby. Politicians, including David Davis and many other campaigners, who are convinced she, the NHS nurse, is a victim of a terrible miscarriage of justice. She, of course, is serving life for 7 murders of babies and 7 attempted murders of babies at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Now, I have to say, none of the evidence that I have seen since the claims of a miscarriage of justice come to light suggest actually that this is a terrible miscarriage of justice. We've got an inquiry into what went wrong. She has applied for appeals. Her lawyers have now applied to the Criminal Cases Review Commission to investigate her case as a potential miscarriage of justice. From what you've seen so far, do you think there is a potential miscarriage of justice? Do we need to have a full review of this case to ensure that we can lay this case to rest?
On the basis of what I've seen in the public domain, and there is a relatively large amount of information in the public domain in relation to this case, but I wouldn't pretend to have read chapter and verse on it.
No.
There are some significant issues that do need to be looked at fully and to be examined fully. With these sorts of cases, as the senior investigating officer and as the Crown prosecutor, you're entirely in the hands, really, of the pathologists.
Yeah.
And we've seen problems in the past with pathologists who have been very bombastic about their opinion being correct.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, quite often it's just an opinion. And there are
different counter experiences. Although what's interesting is that in her defence, and she had top barristers. She didn't have some guy who's just qualified.
No, for sure.
They had numerous different reports from numerous different pathologists. They didn't present that as part of their defence because it didn't actually. Didn't count in her favour. Most of the stuff I've seen written about most of the claims so far have been about sort of statistical evidence, like, as if it was just that she was convicted on she was the only nurse on duty, it must have been her, sort of statistical evidence, which is not, I mean, it was like 5 minutes of the case. That wasn't even relevant to the case. But also this idea that it's, again, all circumstantial. And that's not the case. A jury sat through this case for many, 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 many months. And I'm not saying juries are infallible, but they came up with very nuanced verdicts over a period of weeks, different verdicts for different cases. Some were not guilty, some they couldn't agree on, some were guilty. They were looking at a high bar for the evidence, and the evidence was, overwhelming in many of those cases.
It was, though, largely circumstantial. There was very little in the way of I saw her do this.
There were a number of occasions when she was seen doing things. I mean, that's but my thing is, I believe my best guess is that she is guilty. However, it would be a good thing, would it not, for this to be fully investigated again, to lay it to rest. So whether she is innocent or is she guilty, can we all agree, sort of thing.
Yes, it would, and the defence seemed to have put together a panel of eminent doctors that specialise in neonatal situations and such like, with a range of views, experts from across the world, and I think that's as good a way as any of reviewing the case.
Yeah.
The prosecution relied on one particular pathologist, who I believe was a retired pathologist, or is a retired pathologist now.
And he's saying he was misrepresented.
From some reports that he's changed his mind about some of his opinions.
Yeah, well, no,
that's always going to undermine the case.
Yeah, he believes he's misrepresented. He's been at the press conference today. We'll see how this develops. Thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Peter Kirkham, former Met Police DCI. Thank you. Claire Pearsall, where are you on this again?
This is a really tricky one because I believed her to be guilty. The process was followed.
We weren't sitting in the court. We didn't hear every day of evidence.
No, we didn't. But there was an awful lot of information that came out of it. And the jury, you're right, made decisions on each case individually. And some of them they couldn't decide on, so they didn't go through. I'm not sure that there is any further evidence that the court can see that would prove her innocence.
Yeah, but it wouldn't hurt. I think even for the families of the babies, it must be horrific for them to have all this, brought up again. But to be sure that, because otherwise, if it wasn't her, it's probably a good idea if we know that.
Well, quite. We don't want somebody else running around.
No, but or just abject failures in the hospital. It looked like the hospital was failing on many grounds anyway.
Yeah.
So, anyway, your thoughts on that? Very welcome. 0344 499 1000. Also, of course, on the definition of Islamophobia that Angela Rayner wants to put a council together to come up with. Do we need that, and what should it be? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Up next, weight loss jabs. They should be harder to get hold of. That's what the latest advice is from pharmaceutical companies. Well, not pharmacists, from the pharmacies. Pharmaceutical companies want everyone to have them. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Starmer cannot align himself with anything that the United States is doing because his own base will tear chunks out of him, and they'll go, but you're enabling a fascist and this, that, and the really sensible and mature way that they respond to everything.
Yes.
So he can't do that, even though he is looking right now at what's happening and thinking, if you were to pick a side in the upcoming fight between the EU and the US, there's no question which side you'd pick. You go with the one that's actually got the economic growth, that has the sort of...
And could give you a trade deal away from a bloc that we voted to leave.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Let's talk weight loss jabs. Always in the news, weight loss jabs, the Wegovy's, the Zempic and others. But our online pharmacies are now being told they have to employ stricter checks to stop people who are already perfectly healthy weight or have got a history of eating disorders from being able to buy weight loss jabs. They'll no longer be able to just dispense the medication sold under, I say, Mounjaro, Wegovy and Ozempic to patients who've just completed an online questionnaire or sent photos. They'll actually have to have in-person or on video consultations to verify things like BMI and information from GP or medical records, because they're saying too many people are getting hold of this drug. And yes, guess what? It turns out there are side effects. I know. I'm as surprised as you are. Let's talk about this now with Giles Yeo. He's a professor of molecular neuroendocrinology and he's programme leader at the MRC Metabolic Diseases Unit in Cambridge. Giles, we don't have time for the interview now. We've done your job title. Good morning to you, sir.
Thanks for having me on, Julia.
I don't understand a word of that. I got off. That's all I was. Giles, explain to us, first of all, how do these weight loss jabs work and why are pharmacies and others, why are they a bit worried about people who don't, quote, need them getting hold of them?
So these weight loss jabs, as they're called, all of them, Ozempic, Mounjaro, are weaponized gut hormones. So they're native hormones in our body that go up when we eat. And these hormones tend to make us feel fuller. So we eat something, these hormones get released, they hit the brain and it says, hello, I'm full. So what the drugs are modified versions of these hormones that stick around the blood for longer. It makes you feel fuller. You feel fuller, you eat less, you lose weight. So broadly speaking, that's how they work.
So without feeling like when you're on a health kick and on your January diet, when you're going, oh, I'm hungry all day, I'm eating my lettuce and my tomatoes, but I don't ever feel full and I'm miserable, and then you give up, you have your takeaway and then it's all over. So there's no doubt at all, I've watched lots of people lose weight on these drugs, people who'd really struggled before. Of course, we're told they're only supposed to be given to people for 2 years at a time. Looks like, though, the evidence, even from the trials from these drugs themselves, the moment you come off these drugs, guess what? Unless you've changed your lifestyle and your eating habits and your sort of relationship with food, you put the weight back on. But here's the thing. What is wrong with somebody who they're at a healthy weight, but they'd like to be a bit slimmer? You could be within your healthy BMI, but some people I know would like to just be that little bit slimmer, lose a bit of the tire around the middle. What's wrong with those people getting hold of those drugs?
So, in principle, nothing. Okay, so I think a couple of things. The Ozempic and Wegovy are approved only for 2 years. Mounjaro, there is no time limit, actually, so you can have it for as long as possible. Now, the issue is these drugs at the moment are broadly safe. There are side effects, as you point out, but broadly safe. But we need to know what happens when hundreds of thousands and millions of people are on these drugs for longer to see what the longer-term side effects may be. We don't think it's going to be that, but so before you get actually people who are healthy and want to use it for cosmetic reasons to use it, we need to know a lot more.
Right, you're saying there needs to be a health benefit that is provable to take any potential risk. Now, I absolutely do expect, Giles, that there will be long-term side effects because pharmaceutical companies have a very long history of being very quiet about negative side effects. And it's saying that these drugs were being hailed by all the celebrities, everyone in the news going, oh, I finally lost weight. And now we're seeing people talking about the side effects. But it's particularly an issue, isn't it? It's people who haven't gone to the doctor and got it, whether private or through NHS, but who've actually got these online, bought some. We don't even know necessarily what drugs they're actually getting hold of. Are they actually dangerous drugs that, and we've already seen, a big uptick in people going to hospital needing emergency treatment because they've been using these drugs.
So the good thing about these drugs is that they're powerful and they work. The bad thing about these drugs is that they're powerful and they work for everybody. It doesn't matter if you are a 30-stone man trying to lose weight. That's what it's designed for. That's what you should be having. It will also work for a 7-stone, 16-year-old girl. And I think ultimately that is the issue, where the former, the guy trying to lose weight, fine. That's what it's designed for. Otherwise, it can really cause harm and maybe even death. So the physicians, the doctors really do need line of sight of the actual person that they're just prescribing the drugs to. They're drugs, they should be treated as drugs.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you on that. And again, just someone just filling in an online form, I would have thought even somebody, online video, or even they could just claim to be someone else unless they've got proof of ID and getting their medical records. But when you say these work, I mean, this is the interesting thing. We spoke to Carl Hennigan at Oxford University about this some time ago, and he pointed out, looking at the evidence produced by these drug companies themselves, again, about If you come off them, you put the weight back on, as is often the case with diets that don't involve a major full lifetime change in your abilities to handle, read a relationship with food. But on average, people are losing, they can lose, say, 10% of their body weight if they're overweight. So say you've got someone who's 20 stone and they're able to lose, or even 10% of their body weight, lose 2 stone. You're still only looking at, over a year, you're looking at people losing half a pound a week. You could just give up your lattes in the morning at Starbucks and you would lose that weight. It doesn't seem to me there's very much evidence. I mean, I've seen people losing weight on them, and I get that. But actually, they could lose weight if they just gave up some of the foods that are unhealthy in the first place. So why are we pushing a drug which will have side effects? Because all drugs come with risks of some sort, when there is a perfectly healthy way of people losing weight, which is better for them because it involves lifestyle changes long term, it involves them eating more healthily generally, it will involve them exercising. And shouldn't we be pushing that rather than yet another drug that we can put people on for the rest of their lives?
So there is a physics of it. Clearly, you're right. If you eat less, you're going to lose weight. There's no matter who you are, right? That's the problem is, and this is where it lies. Different people feel their thermostat are set, their hunger levels are set slightly differently. So some people are going to be more driven towards food. What this drug does is, so I think about appetite like as a triangle. Okay, so appetite is an integrated term in the middle. So you have hunger. It involves 3 different things. It involves hunger. We know what that means. It involves feeling full, completely different part of the brain. Yeah. And it involves I love eating, the nice part of eating.
I love eating. I love eating.
And then what happens is if you tug at any point of the triangle changes shape. So they all speak to each other. So what these drugs do is they make you feel fuller and therefore less hungry and helps you to lose weight. Now, does it mean everyone should be on them? No. I think you do need to look at the spectrum. There are going to be people who are 35 stone and they probably do need to be on them. They're going to be someone like me.
Any risk of the drug is outweighed by the extra help. Yeah, the extra health they've got.
It's all a cost-benefit analysis.
Okay.
Now you're going to get someone like me, and my wife thinks I need to lose 1.5 stone. Don't tell anyone. It's probably true. No one's gonna give me Ozempic, right? I would fit in the behavioral category. I should improve my diet. Right. I should be doing this and that. But you're gonna have a bunch of people in the middle, and it's going to be a gray line of which maybe you're 22 stone. Or maybe you are 18 stone, but you are really ill, compared to if you're 18 stone and you're not really ill.
We think you look lovely, Giles. Now, that has been such a great explanation. We'll have to leave it there. We're times against us. Giles here, Professor of Molecular and Neuroendocrinology at Cambridge. I so appreciate you joining us. I hope you'll come on the show again. Claire, has he convinced you?
Yes, I think he explained it brilliantly. I want it. I do want it.
You're so slim and gorgeous.
Thank you. But
this is my worry. We're all going to turn into those mad women in Hollywood who don't eat for 5 weeks before the Oscars. This is no way to live. I'm with him. I like food. I like eating, but I don't trust people who don't.
Do you know?
They're not. I don't think they enjoy life.
Oh, you can enjoy life. Trust me.
Anyway. Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Do get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. If you're on the drugs, give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. This is the Home of Common Sense. Welcome back to the show. Great good afternoon to you. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it's great to have your company with you all the way until 1 o'clock when Ian Collins will be taking over. Lots to talk about today. Just to let you know that lawyers for the convicted child serial killer Lucy Letby have applied to the Criminal Cases Review Commission to investigate her case as a potential miscarriage of justice. Big press conference this morning involving a senior medical figure who was actually he gave evidence for the prosecution. Well, his evidence was used in the prosecution of Lucy Letby, and David Davies, senior Tory MP, backing the calls for her case. We'll keep you up to date on the developments there. Also going to be talking about tariffs, because China this morning announced retaliatory tariffs on some American goods as Donald Trump's 10% tariffs on all Chinese goods came into force this morning. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau caved into Donald Trump's tariff threat and said he would push ahead with border security measures after crisis talks with the US President yesterday. And of course, we also saw the President of Mexico doing exactly the same. Now, also going to be talking about lockdown. Yes, let's think back to those wonderful, happy days when we were locked in our homes and told who we could and could not see, whether we could go to work or not, and everything else in between. Well, it has been revealed that Keir Starmer's voice coach, because that's vital key worker there, travelled between different lockdown tiers in December 2020, indeed on Christmas Eve, amid a fresh row over whether the Prime Minister broke the rules when he was backing the restrictions on everyone else. And my God, was he backing the restrictions on everyone else. We'll talk about that. Plus, Reform UK has overtaken Labour for the very first time in a YouGov opinion poll. It's not the first opinion poll that put Reform ahead, but it's the first one that's not been seen as an outlier. Reform UK on 25% of the vote, Labour on 24%, Tories trailing on 21%. What does that mean for the future of Westminster politics? What's going on in the council elections and much more? I would love to hear your thoughts on all of those stories. Do get in touch. The number to call is 0344 499 1000. We'll get to guests on all of those stories. Also, love to get more of your calls on air and indeed more of your texts and tweets about Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner. She's in the news for two reasons today. One, basically approving council tax rises, which will put some average council tax bills up to $2,500 a year. Because, you'll be able to pay it with all that spare cash you've saved in the last couple of years, what with prices being so low and no costs going up. Remember that? But she's also setting up a council to create an official government definition of Islamophobia. We already know what the Labour definition of Islamophobia is, which basically means any, criticism of basically appearances of Muslimness. That includes even dress. Criticising any aspect of Islam could somehow land you in the handcuffs with the police, because you'd be accused of the crime of Islamophobia. I want to know what your reaction is to that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Don't forget that calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. Let's get back to all the big topics now. Claire Pissell is joining us, former Conservative government advisor. So much of the big debate over Brexit, which we marked 5 years of last Friday. Whoop, whoop. I did not wear my Union Jack dress sitting at home. I did not. I wasn't working. I did have it in the Sun newspaper. I was very pleased with that picture, as suggested by me in my column. But as I celebrated Brexit, but one of the key things that we often talk about was our chances of taking advantage of being outside the EU. And because being in the EU is fine when you've got tariff-free access in the customs union. However, big tariffs imposed on everyone else unless you've got a free trade deal with them. The EU was really bad at making free trade deals. So it was we would be able to have cheaper goods. We'd be able to import stuff from New Zealand without big tariffs on it, and America and the like. Wouldn't that be great? That was one of the benefits. Everyone was a free trader then. Suddenly, even the likes of Reform UK, supposedly a free trade party, as we tackled Richard Tyson earlier, all in favour of what Donald Trump is doing when it comes to tariffs. He's made a number of crucial threats. 25% tariffs on many goods coming in from Canada and from Mexico, 10% on China. Now, the tariffs on Mexico and Canada have basically been put on hold for 30 days. sounds like there's been a win for Donald Trump in phone calls with the leaders of those countries. 10% tariffs went on Chinese goods just at 5 o'clock this morning UK time. Within minutes, we had retaliation from the Chinese with tariffs in return. Talk of tariffs from Donald Trump, blatant threats on the EU. The UK might escape them. We're not quite sure why. The charm of Keir Starmer, apparently. But what does this mean for all of us? What does this mean for world trade? What does it mean for you and me and the pound in our pocket? Let's talk to Rick Gates, his former deputy campaign manager for Donald Trump back in 2016. A very good afternoon to you, Rick.
Hello, Julia. How are you?
Or a very early morning to you, I imagine. First of all, how much support is there for Donald Trump on these tariff threats? Because so much of what he was campaigning on was about the cost of living for ordinary Americans, hit hard by inflation in recent years. And basically, tariffs put prices up for consumers. So is there much support for him?
Yeah, at the moment, there's an extreme amount of support. Now, we'll see how long it lasts, but in the immediate term right now, because of the way President Trump campaigned on this, because he said, hey, I want to make America great again in terms of our economic engine. We want to look at using those tariffs to fight off immigration and fentanyl. And by the way, I want to create a better environment for manufacturing in the U.S. Let's make more of our own products. You guys went through this in the UK many years ago when you started, focusing on buying UK, building UK. And I think it had a lot of success. So right now at this moment, the majority of Americans are behind Donald Trump's tariffs. They understand there's going to be a short-term pain for a longer-term gain, and we're going to work toward that. And so far, Donald Trump's been pretty effective. The Chinese are the only ones so far that have retaliated. We'll see what impact that has. But at the end of the day, what Donald Trump is trying to do is get to a more equitable trade balance with a number of these countries, which is common sense. But our governments in past, Republican and Democrat, haven't focused on that.
But again, the reason why, America imports lots of goods from China is China makes very, very cheap goods. They've got even cheaper energy. Then it's obviously subsidised by, a communist, totalitarian government, very different from what's going on in America. But, the Americans want cheap goods. They want the sort of cheap tat you get from China, which we get, and cheap technology and cheaper cars and all of that. That's what they want. Is this a battle between prices and jobs? Because one of the sort of arguments from the globalists is that, we'll have completely free trade, we'll have no borders, won't that be great? And basically, some countries will do better making something, some others. But the reality of that means you basically don't manufacture anything in Western countries because your energy costs, your wage costs are just way too high. So it's all very well having cheap prices, but there aren't any jobs for anybody to earn the money to pay those cheap prices. And it's about onshoring those manufacturing jobs, particularly in those key swing states which were crucial to Donald Trump's victory. Trouble with this, of course, is that, as I say, fundamentally, he can win the battle with Canada and Mexico. America has the economic might. But China is a different matter entirely, quite apart from the fact that Xi Jinping doesn't need to quite literally kowtow to Donald Trump. He knows that Donald Trump needs him as much as he needs Donald Trump. So where does that end?
Yeah, this is the interesting part. China's economy is not flourishing like it once was, and there are issues with respect to how far President Xi can take this. And if you look at what they're doing, they imposed specific tariffs as a retaliatory measure against the U.S., but that was just to get to the negotiating table. If you look at the Chinese rhetoric, they could have gone to a lot more extreme. So I think if you look at
it was a shot across the bows. But it was crucial stuff, some rare minerals and some things like that are vital to mobile phone components and things like that. And the investigation into Google and things like that. These are very targeted, aren't they?
Very specific, very targeted, and meant to send a message as opposed to extract a lot of pain. And I think, yes, the Chinese have more leverage than Mexico and Canada, no question about it. But at the end of the day, Chinese also have the experience of Donald Trump's first term, where they were caught unprepared when Donald Trump levied those tariffs against them. So a little more knowledge this time around. And again, they could have gone to a lot more extreme. They didn't. I think that's because they want to get to the negotiating table too, because their economy is in a fragile spot, and they recognize recognize that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. People forget, how tied in all our economies are. But the point is, if this continues, and we've got threats against the EU as well, we've got words from Emmanuel Macron from this Brussels meeting yesterday, which was attended, I think, outrageously by our Prime Minister. Not a member of the EU, he just hasn't got that memo yet. It took 5 years it must have been lost in the post. But basically, talking about retaliation, the EU, he always wants to be the strong man of Europe. But the reality is that the EU could retaliate against America, but Donald Trump is not going to take that very well.
No, and you look, EU is an economic powerhouse as well, combined, among those countries. And so I think that the U.S. will tread carefully in terms of what they do. But remember, these are not just, random, threats that Donald Trump's throwing out. He's doing it for specific reasons. He's doing it to get the trade balance into a more equitable position, which previous U.S. governments have not done. And more specifically, and, unopposed to like what the EU's doing, where it's not, a culprit in the immigration and fentanyl fight that we're having along our southern and northern borders. Okay. That's why those opening salvos against Mexico and Canada.
Well, hold on a minute. But if he holds off the tariffs because he's got other things, then then it's not about a more equitable trade balance. And again, rich countries are often going to be importing stuff. But bearing in mind, everyone uses American tech. That's a massive, massive export, isn't it? Let's talk about Canada and Mexico specifically. Mexico, we saw the Mexican president, relatively newly elected herself, Claudia Sheinbaum. She agreed to reinforce the border with troops. I mean, again, that said, wasn't it, 10,000 troops extra on a 2,000-mile border? I mean, I hope they've got really long arm span. That's all I can say. I'm not quite sure how much that works. Canada also talking about more troops on the border. Both the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Mexican president talking about controlling the border more in terms of the flow of illegal migrants and the flow of fentanyl and other illegal drugs. I think most of us weren't really aware that there was an issue on the northern border. Why would illegal migrants be coming from Canada, where they're basically welcomed with open arms by the Canadian government? Why would they be travelling to America? And the same with the fentanyl. Surely Mexico would always be an easier route. Could you talk us through how big that problem is?
Yeah, it's actually bigger than most people think. I know a lot of people have focused on the southern border, but over the last 4 years, there's been an extreme number of people that have come through the northern border, and it's created a lot of issues. So, in the U.S., we have a saying, every state has become a border state now, and that means they're impacted. So you have states, in the middle of our country, like Indiana, Ohio, that are feeling the effects of these illegal immigrants and the illegal drug trade and the fentanyl crisis coming in and impacting their states. Yeah. In Washington now, we had a group of national sheriffs come in and give us, a lot of examples of what's happening in their states. And it's really, disheartening. It's hard to see these communities wrecked by this type of activity. But the northern border, unlike what most people think, is just as open as the southern border. It just doesn't get as much attention, but there are plenty of immigrants coming through. And if you look at what Prime Minister Trudeau posted yesterday after his conversation, I think he's done more in the last 24 hours than he did in the last 2 years of his term. It's incredible.
And you do wonder, well, why didn't you deal with this before? It does seem extraordinary, doesn't it? Let's talk before we leave Great Gate, so about some other measures that have been announced, particularly Elon Musk sort of Doge measures dealing with federal employees. We had all that talk last week and announcements from the president as well. Basically, back to your desks. Working from home ain't an option if you're a federal employee. I think they've got till this Thursday. They've got to be back at their desk in the office or they will be fired. Offer of basically 8 months redundancy pay to all 2 million federal employees. Take it. I mean, they're hoping to get rid of 5 to 10%. Have we got any sign that any of these measures are already hitting home and working?
Oh, absolutely. There are a number of federal workers that have already retired, resigned, and the deadline on February 6th, I think it'll be interesting to see how many that number actually amounts to.
Won't it just?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, it's no secret. If you're a doctor, you have to go into the hospital to work, right? If you're a federal worker and you're being paid by taxpayers to do the work of the American people, you got to be at your office to work. And it's just a state of mind. Yes, COVID kind of, gave us this opportunity to work remotely, work by Zoom, work from another jurisdiction. But we're trying to get government working again. And part of that is getting the workers back into the offices.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem too much to ask, does it? It really, really doesn't. What do you make? I mean, you worked as a deputy campaign manager for Donald Trump 2016. He seems to be so much more organised together, got a team. I mean, let's face it, he was surprised in 2016. You can see the looks of shock on their faces when they announced he was the winner. But he's very much more organised. He's hit the ground running, a lot of executive orders. I'm not going to agree with everything he does, but I agree with an awful lot. Tackling the diversity, woke agenda, all of that. What do you think his attitude is to Britain? We're told that, Britain may well escape these tariffs and threats, and he seems to have a good relationship with Keir Starmer, I think, against everyone's expectation. But what do you think Donald Trump's attitude to us Brits is?
I think it's very positive. He's always had a positive, attitude toward it. Again, he's not going to allow America to be, disenfranchised in any way by, the UK. He's going to protect American interests. But at the same time, he obviously has, a number of real estate assets over there. He's got family history over there. He loves the country. And so I think that he will take that approach, but he will want it to be a fair relationship. That is kind of his ultimate mantra with any country. But I do think the UK holds a special place. That's why I think if you look at what Keir Starmer did during the election and really coming out and supporting Kamala Harris and her team, as a leader in the world, you shouldn't do that. But at the end of the day, you haven't seen a lot of retaliation by Donald Trump with respect to Keir Starmer specifically. Right. I think he looks at the bigger picture and sees that the UK is an important ally in a number of our fights around the world, and he's going to treat it as such.
Well, I mean, I think we just need to roll out that red carpet to Buckingham Palace, trip to Windsor Castle, a little bit of Charles, bit of William, Camilla, Kate. That's what we got them for. That's what they're useful for. Rick Gates, such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Claire Pistol, I mean, just coming up on the tariff issue, I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, lots of people very much defending, this is a negotiation tactic. But Donald Trump, often some of this, when he talks about trade imbalances, some of the things he cites are frankly untrue. I mean, even being generous to them, they're untrue. They're just complete pie-in-the-sky nonsense, a lot of it.
Yeah, and he does a lot of that. He'll put out some really bold statements, and then you'll find
with a specific figure.
Yeah, with a specific figure. And when anybody goes and looks for it, they just go, well, hang on, this is not right. But he's moved on to the next subject. Yeah. He is one step ahead, and he's going for that one. And he tends to scatter those things around and see which one falls and stays in his favour.
Yeah. I mean, you always wonder, where did you get that figure from? I mean, don't give a figure if you're not sure. He just says it so convincingly. What do you make of this? No working from home, 2 million federal employees. On Thursday, you are back in the office or you will be fired. I mean, this is what Elon Musk did at Twitter when he bought Twitter and turned it into X. Basically said all these people were being paid massive 6-figure salaries, never turning up. They had a canteen serving sort of Wagyu beef, for an empty office. With bean bags and goldfish tanks and things. And basically just said, back in the office on Monday or I'll consider you to have resigned. Now, different labour laws in America from here. Here, can't get Whitehall staff. People literally working in Department of Health and in the Treasury to sodding well turn up to work, having Zoom meetings. You've got the Met Police. They're civilian workers refusing to turn up. Literally refusing to turn up in the office. I mean, God, if you're dealing with any police cases at the moment involving any admin, that's why you ain't getting any. No one's getting back to you. It is just extraordinary. In this country, we can't even get people to turn up 3 days a week. Isn't this the answer? Do we not need a little bit of Trump and Musk here?
I think there does when you're looking at taxpayer-funded positions, which is what the civil service are, and that's what Whitehall is full of, then absolutely you need to look at why they're allowed to get away with saying, I'm not going to come in.
And whose contract doesn't say that you're going to be required to work wherever it is reasonable? Like, they can't just say, oh, you live in London, oh, now we expect you to work in Fife. They can't do that, but they're reasonably allowed to say, at this particular conference or this relevant to your work, we'd expect you to be there for 2 days. This is, I mean, have these people read their employment contracts, and why do not the bosses just say, why do not ministers just say, seriously, read your contract, feel free to go off and get another job, but on Thursday, you're going to be in the office.
Because they don't want to upset anybody, do they?
God
they don't
forbid
want to be
we'd upset anybody.
They don't want it to be unfair.
Working from home, opposing it is a general thing, particularly for people in Whitehall. It probably makes us far right. Everything else does. Everything else does. I can't wait to get to more of your calls, please, on lots of the topics we are talking about. In particular, asking about Dame. I don't know. She probably will be one day, won't she? She will. She'll be Dame Angela Rayner. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner setting up a council to create an official government definition of Islamophobia. Because honestly, if there's one problem this country really needs to solve, it's what is the definition of Islamophobia? And what we need to do is criminalise a load of people who are criticising apparently outward signs of Muslimness. Deep sighs all round. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. If you want to get in touch about Trump and his tariffs and anything else we're talking about, do get in touch. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
full-length runway in Britain was built in the 1940s. No progress in 80 years. A third runway could increase potential GDP by 0.43% by 2050.
Could a new runway be built that abides with carbon targets, concerns around noise pollution and concerns around air pollution?
That a third runway at Heathrow would unlock further growth, boost investment, increase exports and make the UK more open and more connected.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very, very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:25 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to Dave. He's in London. We want to talk about Angela Rayner setting up a council to come up with an official government definition of Islamophobia. What do you make of that?
Well, hi, Julia.
Hi.
It's clearly the long-term plan, as I've often said, is how they are going to try and seal in the vote.
You think this is a long-term plan, basically shore up the Muslim vote? Yeah.
It's one of a dozen things they've got going on. The public sector, they'll all vote Labour, obviously, because that's the best way you're going to get a pay rise. On the Islamophobia thing, that they will stand a better chance of reconnecting back with the Muslim vote, because the Gaza war will be a long distant memory by then. Votes for 16-year-olds, increased postal votes, giving the votes to migrants.
Well, they'd like to give votes to EU citizens, which is weird because
I was just coming on to that one on my list as well. So this is what they're doing. They're trying to the 16-year-old vote. They're trying to do the math and work out, how they can seal this vote in. Clearly, they've got a problem with pensioners now, farmers, any right-minded thinking citizen in the country, which is
private sector.
yes, private, all of that, but private sector generally. But so that's clearly what's. But
so you think this is gerrymandering? Because here's the thing: this is what the Democrats were accused of doing in the United States. Actually, bring a load of migrants, basically allow them settled status or allow them to vote, and whether dodgily or in reality, all these different things. You woo the younger vote, you that. How's that worked out for them in November last year? And the reality is that actually, you know, a lot more people are a lot more sensible. Also, young people, like in most of Western Europe, actually, are moving to the right, not the left.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I like Nigel Farage, but we don't have a Donald Trump coming along who's going to sort this out in the space of 3 weeks. And I don't know if you've listened to Sweet Caroline, the new press secretary. I mean, what a powerful woman, 27 years old, got children, and is having a daily conference with 400 press people.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It is incredible how often no one in the media in America queried the fact that Joe Biden would go months and months and months and months without answering a single question from the media, which is an absolute outrage.
Yeah, absolutely. And even Trump, I know when he stood up about the plane crash in the Washington and started going on about DEI, and it went off on a bit of a tangent.
He may well be right, though.
At least he came along and at least he talked. I reckon Biden would have put his transport secretary up to talk about it and stayed in his bunker.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very, really interesting. Thank you so much for that, Dave. Thank you for that. Let me read some of your texts and tweets coming in as well. Tim says, this definition of Islamophobia, extremely dangerous. It should be stopped at all costs. Jill says, if only we all had armed police following us around, we would all feel a lot safer, but only a few are privileged for like that, the ones making all the ridiculous laws, which is a very good point. But the politicians doing this are protected. Be waste of time, money and resources, so exactly what I expect of this government, especially Angela Rayner. Mickey says waste of space, time and money just so they can try and secure their future voters. Along the lines of what Dave says, disgusting traitors to the British tax-paying public. Norman says, why do we need it? The Equalities Act 2010 protects religions from discrimination or persecution. We have laws against hate speech already. And Warwick says, isn't there already an Islamic council technically running in the background of Westminster? Or at least that was my understanding. And Gary says, why do one group get special protection, privileges and treatment? The only phobia in this country is far-rightophobia, i.e. everybody. But this interesting thing, Claire, this is supposed to be about sort of improving community relations, and everything we're always told, we didn't want to bring up like all the rape, grooming gangs, community tensions. We have to worry about not giving information about Axaruda Cabana and the Mass Houseport murders because of community tensions. And actually, again and again and again, the authorities stir up community tensions by two-tier policing, two-tier justice, treating and having different expectations of different people of different backgrounds, and they stir that up. And again, I do think right-minded people of every ethnicity and every religion all share the same view. They just want to be treated the same.
They do, and you store up so many more problems if you start giving certain groups more control over an area or better treatment.
Or more privilege, more privileged protection.
Absolutely, and we defer to their religion, for example, and you shouldn't have to do that. We are citizens of a country. If you are taxpayers, you are all equal. You should be treated as such. You shouldn't split up communities based on ethnicity.
But I've very much stood up for what's Israel and like. But we've been invited to bat mitzvahs, the Jewish girls sort of coming of age parties with my daughter's friends, and we've been invited to them by really good friends of ours, but they've been in Orthodox synagogues where men and women are seated separately and things like. And we've just said, no, thank you, we're not willing to do that. I wouldn't do it in a mosque. I wouldn't do it in a synagogue. And again, I don't have to agree with it. I would not come and make a scene. I simply won't attend. Please don't take offence. I cause none. But I refuse to be forced to do that because it's not something I accept or believe in. I think it's wrong. So I don't. So again, one can be really supportive of someone's rights, someone's right to safety and protection, but not sign up to those views yourself. And I don't want to. I give my views. I'm open about my views. That is my job. But I'm not going to force anybody to agree with me on any particular issue that someone with a religious perspective could disagree on. I had a baby before I got married. There'll be some, Christians be horrified by that, many other religious groups, but I'm not forcing them to do it as long as they don't force me to do it.
Well, this is it. I mean, I'm divorced, so that, casts me aside in many
Get her out of the studio.
I'm an awful person. Hey,
Scottish woman.
Exactly. What should we do?
I think we should probably stone you, shouldn't we? I don't know. It's so difficult to keep up with the rules these days.
I'm busy this afternoon. If we could arrange for another day, that would be great.
Sorry. I love this show. I mean, just doing it is so much fun. Let's go to another call. Rachel is in Manchester. Rachel, you wanted to... We're being very glib and light, but actually a very serious subject. You definitely want to talk about a serious subject, this horrific school stabbing. What do you want to say?
Yeah, hi, Julia.
Hello.
Hi, I'm just in the supermarket at the minute, so if you hear any
Don't worry.
noises.
Often people call in and we call you back at really inopportune moments.
I know, yeah, I've been loitering around the wine.
I do that anyway. I don't use the excuse of being on the phone.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So my son, he's autistic, and he was in mainstream at the time. So in their little hub for the SEN kids, they had a boy in there who was horrible. He was a bully. He used to bully my son. He used to bully another boy who my son used to stick up for all the time.
Yeah.
Nothing was ever done about it, as they never do.
Excuses made, yeah.
Yeah, so this one day he said to my son that he was going to bring a knife into school and stab him, and that he knew a lot.
How old was your son at the time?
He was 13.
Absolutely terrifying. And did your son tell you?
Yeah, sorry, no, he was 12 actually. 12? Yes, he did. They didn't tell me. He said that he knew a load of year 11s that could beat him up as well.
Yeah.
So my son had huge anxiety about going to school anyway.
Yeah.
And, I was fuming because I've been telling my son that he's safe at school, it's fine, he's safe, blah, blah, blah. And then that happened. And they didn't tell me, he told me.
So your son had told the teachers, but the teachers didn't tell you?
Yeah,
and then he told you. So what did you do? Because I imagine, before he's even got the words out of his mouth, I'm already on the way to the school at that point.
Well, yeah, this was later on in the evening, so the first thing I did was phone the police.
Yep.
I said, I'm not having it. No, I'm not having it. And he was really frightened. My son was really frightened because he thought that he was going to go into school and they'll be going, oh, yeah, I'm on phone the police, like they do. But yeah, I phoned the police and the police were absolutely brilliant. He was like, I don't deal with bullies. It's just, I hate them. And he went round on a Sunday. This lad was in care.
Right.
And he went round on the Sunday and threw him in the back of the van and give him a good ticking off. But school was saying to me, well, no, they said, well, it wasn't that bad.
What do you mean? Well, he didn't actually stab him to death, so that's okay.
Yeah, but they said, oh, your son was saying stuff to him as well. And I said, so what?
Unless he threatened to actually stab him, God, as a general rule, I'm of the view, can we not bring police into schools and let kids, sort their stuff out? Well, I think parents often, teachers don't let kids sort stuff out. But when there's a bully or someone threatening with a knife, and what we saw, there are parents, parents of Harvey Wilkes, who they had to go and identify their son on a morgue slab. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Can you imagine?
I know, and it's disgusting the way that they dealt with it.
Was the kid allowed back into school?
Yes, and this is the thing, because they said, he's got complex needs around communication.
Do you think?
I was like, I have complex needs around other things as well if I get my hands on him.
Yeah, well, I've got complex needs as a mother. My complex needs involve my child not being stabbed to death at school. And that is extraordinary. Again, how did it resolve itself? If it did?
Well, I ended up having to pull him out of the school because he was frightened.
Yeah.
And they kept saying to me, well, he won't see him anymore. They're in a different place. He won't be near him. He won't be this, that, and the other. I said, he's not coming back.
No.
That is it. He is not coming back.
That's what mums have to do. Rachel, I so appreciate your call. Yeah. You get back to your shopping. Really appreciate that call. Claire, you've got a teenage lad.
Yeah, I do. And
it's terrifying.
It is absolutely terrifying. You don't think that your child is going to school and not come home again. Nobody does. But I think just that last call with the treatment of that child by saying your child was equally as bad.
Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous.
But clearly he wasn't, because he wasn't arrested by the... He hadn't made that same
threat. But the police, all fair play to them, sounded like they handled it incredibly well.
But it shouldn't be down to the luck of having a good police officer who's going... Also, you want that kid to get short, sharp shock. And And again, you threaten with a knife. Bye. Thanks for coming.
Out of school.
Whatever unit he's in the school, he needs to be in a safer unit somewhere else.
Yes.
Exactly. Or just wait till the next kid gets stabbed. Crazy. 12:35 is the time. Do get in touch, your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000. Up next, we're going to be talking about, how Keir Starmer is managing the possible threat of US tariffs. Would they hit us? Would they hit us if it hit the EU? Also, did Keir Starmer break lockdown rules with his voice coach back in December 2020? This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk British politics now with Jonathan Haslam. He's the former Director of Communications for John Major when he was at Number 10, and he joins us now. Good afternoon to you, Jonathan.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, look, let's talk first of all. I mean, the topic we're talking about an awful lot today is this new definition of Islamophobia that Angela Rayner is putting a council together with. The former Tory Attorney General, Dominic Grieve, is supposed to be heading this council to come up with an official government definition of Islamophobia. First of all, do we need a government definition of Islamophobia?
I'm very wary about this. I am very, very concerned about freedom of speech. I'm very wary, as a number of your callers have said, about the idea of splitting off sectors of British society and having special rules for them. Now, it is said that Rayner is also thinking about whether or not there should be a similar council on anti-Semitism. I mean, the plain fact is, as one of your callers said, we've got an Equality Act of 2010, and that should mean that we are all treated as equal citizens and respect each other's faiths and beliefs. And that seems to me a very strong place to start. Because the other aspect to this is the two aspects. First of all, we are concerned about an integrated society that has British values, whatever the colour of our skin, our caste, our religious beliefs or whatever. There should be something there which brings us all together. The other point that I'm really concerned about is the potential then to see an expansion of the thing that was being called Sharia law, which is actually the law which is imposed in Islam, and the extent to which that is treated within some communities as a substitute for British law. Yeah, that's wrong. If we're going to bring the societies together, stop treating people differently. We've got an Equality Act. Let's not play off one sector of society against another. And I have a great deal of respect for Dominic Grieve, very, very intelligent man and such like. I don't think he's actually been formally approached, which would be part of the argument for saying this is not properly thought out at this stage. Treat very, very carefully, because this has been going on for a long time. 2018, there was a committee headed by West Streeting that came up with some sort of a definition. And if you read that definition, it just seems to me that it's an open door for cancelling free speech and actually making things worse. That's not where we need to start from.
Absolutely. I certainly agree with that. What do you make of Trump and tariffs? And obviously we have these threats against Canada and Mexico now. Those tariff threats put on hold 25% tariffs in return for work at the border by both those countries to tackle not just illegal migration, but also fentanyl and other opioids coming into the US. But 10% tariffs on China, retaliation from China, threats of they came into force this morning, threats against the EU. We've got Emmanuel Macron and others in Brussels yesterday at that meeting with Keir Starmer, basically, talking tough about, Europe would respond. We're told that Britain somehow might well escape these tariffs, but stop. We don't have a massive imbalance of trade with America, so that wouldn't necessarily be an issue. But also, it appears that Donald Trump is getting on very well with Keir Starmer. I think against all of our better expectations. But there's no doubt at all, Britain can be caught up in a tariff war if it does happen across the Atlantic, or indeed with China, because of course it's going to affect a lot of the goods that we buy. What would you, if you were still in Number 10, what would you be recommending to your Prime Minister at that point to do?
Keep your head down at the moment. We're not in the crosshairs. Let's not make enemies on either side of the argument, because clearly the United States is a very, very important player. Donald Trump is using his might, his economic might, to look at more than just trade matters. It's trade as a weapon for diplomacy. We've seen that with Mexico. We've seen it with the Canadians. Now, with the European Union, it's still a big market for us. And if we can improve relations and get easier trading arrangements, that would be very good news. But honestly, don't pick fights that you don't need to when you are likely to lose in any case. We're a small player, but we're a very open economy. We want free trade, and that's going to work to our benefit. Everybody's going to suffer if tariffs take over.
Well, this is the interesting thing. I tackled Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, about this morning, because they're, very much pro-free trade in Reform UK, but apparently also pro-Donald Trump making tariff threats. Now, we're told about this, the balance of trade, but of course, when Canada and Mexico agreed to sort of put more troops on the borders to try and give more border control, then Donald Trump backs off. So it's clearly not about the balance of trade, otherwise he wouldn't have backed off, would he? But this is the thing. A lot of people in this country might be going, this isn't our problem, this is something that's happening over there, whether it's China or America or Europe. But we will be caught in the crosshairs. It will impact us. And tariffs are another word for a tax. It is a tax making goods that we buy from abroad more expensive.
And making them more expensive for American consumers as well. So it's not something that works in the long period of time. And I think that we've got to be really open about it. Yes, of course, we would all like to have a free trade arrangement with the United States, but we do need to know about the downsides. And the most obvious ones are often brought out. They are, do you want chlorinated chicken to come? Do you want to have beef stuffed full of various chemicals to make
already is.
And what's the impact on the British farming industry? So we need a wider debate. But let's, heaven's sake, I'll go back to it again, Julia, please. Don't pick fights that A, you can't win, and B, you don't need to be in. And for God's sake, we'll go back to my hobby horse, the Chagos Islands. Yes. That one's not off my agenda.
No, that's it.
You've heard it from me before.
Since you've raised it, I mean, we suddenly thought there was a deal was going to all be signed, sealed and delivered with the Mauritius government for us to hand over British territory to a country that has never owned it, who are in league with China for some reason, and then pay them for the privilege of doing so. We thought that was all going to be signed and sealed before Donald Trump got in, but clearly it's still on the table. Do you think it's going to go ahead or not?
I very much hope that we will get a sensible accommodation with the United States. We'll treat the Chagosians, who have been treated a bit roughly, better. We won't get into some devil's pact with the Mauritian government, because I don't think it works. And if Nick Thomas-Symonds is talking about utter pragmatism
the EU
with
minister.
the European Union, then that's fine. Let's have utter pragmatism elsewhere. Because what we've got here is, an international court headed by those bastions of freedom, Russia, China and Iran, telling us that we're bad boys.
I've got no time for any of these international courts, particularly after some of their rulings on Israel as well. Let me bring you back close to home, though. We did see last night a YouGov poll, the first sort of mainstream poll that has put Reform UK ahead, not just of the Tories, they've been ahead of the Tories quite a lot in recent weeks, but ahead even of Labour on 25 points, Labour on 24 points, Tories trailing behind on 21 points. Now, we've got a margin of error. They could all be mixed up, but the direction of travel is very clear. Reform going up, Tories going down, Labour certainly plummeting down since their victory last July. How worried should Kemi Badenoch, as a very new Tory leader, how worried should she be about Reform's rise in the polls? In particular, we know that Reform took a lot of Tory votes in July last year at the election, but also, according to this poll, even of those who voted Tory last July, a quarter of those are now saying they would vote Reform. How worried should she be?
She should be extremely worried. And where is Kemi Badenoch? I don't think I've heard much from her in the past few months, weeks, since she became leader. She's not at the moment out there fighting for the Conservative Party. And although really, we talk about margins of error, opinion polls at this time of a national nature don't matter. But one point. We've got local elections coming up. Are there going to be more local elections where Tory councillors are defecting and going to stand for Reform? It's going to be a fascinating contest. It'll tell us quite a lot about the direction of travel. But cautionary words, we've been here before. I can remember the 1980s and the SDP and how they flew very high in the polls. And even now, although you've seen the Brexit Party, the predecessor of Reform, do tremendously well in European elections, it didn't work nationally. Things have changed, of course, they have, but let's see to the real tests. Then we'll get a better idea of how high.
Certainly momentum of travel, but as you say, I mean, again, there's a very high bar. There's a point at which in the polls you need to get over for actually to deliver a big number of seats. Just finally, I want to ask you about Keir Starmer being criticised for possibly breaking COVID rules and lockdown rules back in December 2020. Remember, we were all told, no, we're not going to have a lockdown, but we're going into certainly the London and South East, millions and millions of people into Tier 4. You were banned from travelling from a lower tier into a higher tier. Pretty much people were told to stay at home. We're having another another round. But Keir Starmer, for some reason, decided to get a voice coach, Leonie Mellinger, to visit his Labour London headquarters on Christmas Eve. To give him some advice before he made a statement on Boris Johnson's then Brexit deal. He's been accused of basically breaking those lockdown rules, that she was doing all of her other work online. She travelled by train between tiers. It wasn't clearly essential work. Some claims that she was somehow a key worker, as of course he was as a politician. Do you think he broke lockdown rules, and does it matter if he did?
Well, two things. There's several things. First of all, it's dubious whether or not he broke the law because he had it designated as essential worker. I can't get worked up about that. I can get worked up about the strict feed about his character. We've seen it with the gifts that he's taken, and that's bad news for him overall. Yep. The other thing is, what was the point? Anybody who heard the work from, let's go and turn the lights on in Regent Street knew that this lady actually hadn't done her job terribly well.
I mean, he definitely shouldn't have paid her, should he? Jonathan Haslam, thank you very much indeed, former Director of Communications at Number 10. I have to say, at the point this was happening, I was in Antigua on holiday. As was interesting. Having said, I didn't think we should lock down again, by the way, and arguing against it, and went totally legally, by the way. I was reported to the police by a few various people. And they're totally legal, along with everyone else on the plane. We went into Tier 4 while we were in the air. One Piers Morgan, interestingly, also went to Antigua that holiday, as I discovered while I was out there. We're quite well known, because he's always in Antigua. But interestingly, having told everybody, I don't see what the big deal is, we need to lock down for Christmas, and then went to Antigua on holiday.
No. All right.
Some of us aren't hypocrites about these things. No. 12:49 is time. We're going to take a quick break. We'll get back to you. We'll hear more from Claire coming up next. This is Talk.
This is a blatant betrayal of what the people of Britain voted for and what you personally campaigned very hard for, and that was for us to leave. What is he doing there, Alex?
Taking instructions, because that's all he's able to do. The man has no conviction, he has no ideology, he's got extremely zero levels of courage, and so he would much rather be told what to do, even if it's by a failing organisation that seems to make every single mistake that could be made.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Claire Pearsall still with me, former Conservative Government Minister, Advisor. What is it, Minister?
Minister.
I'd love you. I wish you'd been a minister. You lot might not have lost the election if they had sensible people like you. I do like to point out that her other half is a right old lefty. Can you be a right old lefty? You know what I mean? A newspaper political editor, a lefty, and he messages every time we're on air together going, "You bunch of right-wingers," you know, he's stepping around the studio.
Yeah, he's accused me of wearing jack boots. So, you know, he's lovely, honestly. He's very good. He's misguided.
To be fair, I had a Christmas party and your husband turned up in a flak jacket.
Certainly did.
To my Christmas party.
He did. He wore that all the way through London.
Quite genuinely. You were very proud. You were very proud. He's a top man. Anyway, hello, Nigel. He's going to message us now. I want to come back to this issue of Starmer's voice coach. Now, yesterday, Mike Graham and I were chatting about this, and I said, I just don't, you know, I've not moved on from it. I'm genuine. I still see stories. I still see you know, films, things that are filmed during that time of people wearing masks. And honestly, my whole body tenses up. I'm so angry about it. And, you know, I was duped in the first few months. You know, I was going, wear a mask, wear a mask. You know, so angry about the lies we were told and the outrageous imposition on our civil liberties. But I'm particularly bothered by the hypocrisy. Now, I'm somebody who absolutely said from word go, as soon as we emerged about those parties at number 10, Boris had to go. I mean, the Cabinet Secretary should have gone. Most of his senior staff should have gone. I am apoplectic about it. I will be to the end of time. Every time I see Boris Johnson at something, you know, I go to Westminster, he and I just look at each other, I'm like, still glad you're out. I genuinely, it wasn't about Kate. He was quite happy for everyone. He was quite happy to impose, and it was his choice. He wasn't bamboozled. It was his choice as the Prime Minister to impose rules and laws on us that probably saved not a single life, cost in the long term far more lives because lockdowns and not, you know, and the way they treated people, the impact, the impact on education, on health, on social cohesion, every aspect of our lives, I think, are worse now as a result. I really do. It's a terrible, terrible thing to have done against all the original medical advice. Keir Starmer was cheering it all on. He wanted every lockdown to start sooner, to be deeper, to be stricter, to go on longer. Genuinely, on the basis on which they said that lockdown should continue, we would still be in lockdown now. Because you know what? People are still dying of COVID. Oh, by the way, lots of other things, which say no one died of anything before 2020. Remember that. But Keir Starmer and his curry and beer, I think that was a breach of lockdown rules. I think it's an absolute load of technical nonsense that he wasn't in breach. And he absolutely would have been. I don't believe for a moment they weren't routinely breaching it. Numerous MPs, numerous people who were pushing with this stuff. We know the likes of, you know, Kay Burley on Sky News, wagging her little finger all the time on television. Off she goes, has a lovely dinner and goes to a bar for her 60th birthday. Was not allowed at the time, did it anyway. Keir Starmer's voice coach, Leonie Mellinger, who's clearly not very good at her job because we've heard him speak, right, since then. She travelled between different COVID tiers from tier 3 to tier 4. That was definitely 100% against the rules. Residents in tiers 1 to 3 should not enter tier 4 areas. But she travelled to London on Christmas Eve 2020 to give him voice coaching before he made a statement about Boris Johnson's Brexit deal. She posted a photograph inside the Labour headquarters out of an empty train going home, she wrote. So we know it happened. There's no doubt about that. Was she on some technicality key work? We know lots of bizarre reasons. Sports people and actors were allowed to be key, you know, keep the population quiet with some football and some Netflix, seemed to be the argument from the great and the good. But I mean, was this a breach and does it matter?
Yes, it was, and yes, it does. I really do. I haven't forgiven Boris Johnson for a lot of his bad behaviour. But when you look at Keir Starmer, and a lot of senior Labour MPs were having a pop every single time a Tory MP was found to have breached the rules, they called for them to resign. Why isn't it any different?
They were, the Labour lot weren't making the rules, but they were egging them on.
They were, and they wanted tougher rules, and they wanted longer, tougher rules at that. So no, I'm not buying any of this, and the silence we're getting from number 10 isn't going to last.
And the tetchy response from Keir Starmer when he was asked in Brussels about it was...
Of course I didn't reach any rules.
I mean, I think even if there were a police investigation, again, it would be her that broke the rules, and it would all disappear. People say no one would care. But there are a lot of people who weren't with relatives. They were left on their own. There are people who had relatives die, didn't get to meet their grandchildren newborn, who will remember every single moment of this.
And they
still
will
angry
care.
and quite rightly. Claire Pistol, thank you so much. Great to have you on the show as always. One Mr. Ian Collins has arrived in the studio. Do you care about this story?
I care about it from a completely different angle. I am fuming about it because I was on the shortlist for the voice coach gig.
You'd have done a better job.
I was right up there, final 3, never got a phone call back, and then suddenly this actor woman suddenly pitches up at number 10.
I have to say,
whatever she was.
I'd love to know what they paid her, because she really did do a great job. If this is... Basically, his issue was he was a bit wooden when he was reading things. It's like, oh, but now, such a contrast.
Oh, he's great. Yeah, well, when he was asked that in Brussels, I think that's what came back. He was trying to work out when he was going to get his money back, wasn't he? That's what it was.
Seriously,
he must have put in an invoice to get the return of the
But apparently she worked with him for a long time.
So like 2017 or something?
I mean,
2019 or something
to help
like
him
that.
even when he was...
So when did this happen? There's never been a transformation of Keir Starmer's delivery capabilities that have always been pretty woeful.
It's really
sort of
bizarre.
a kind of a weird